Apologies for being a little bit late. We call the meeting to order at 6:02 p.m. on Wednesday, November 9th. We'll start off the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like we have everyone in attendance in the hall. All right. We'll start off with committee reports. We'll work through Public Works. So each one, this is a new thing for everyone. We're doing the workshop side of it. So we'll do, each area will have its own public comment to begin with. That way we can kind of still keep things mildly separated anyway. Yes.
Would you entertain any type of motion to jump Todd Streeter up to top of the agenda?
Sure. Anyone have any problems? I'm like, I'll make a motion to move unfinished business discussion, comprehensive plan Todd Streeter to the front of the agenda. Second. First, second, any other comments or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? Hearing none, there we go. All right. Must be Todd.
Good evening. Thank you for being accommodating for my presence here. I understand that there may be some questions from the board and some newer members of the board regarding the CAP project that we have going on underway. I can give you just a brief summary of the process for those who are not familiar with it, and then I can move on to an update, and then happy to answer any questions that people have. The CAP process is called the Community Action Plan. It is a process by which the community has a very purposeful process that is sanctioned by the municipality, in this case, in all cases that I've worked on. And it's a bottom-up approach, to be honest with you. It is an opportunity for the citizens of any municipality to weigh in on ideas, recommendations, opportunities that a municipality may have to further itself. And I leave that open because every community is different in terms of issues and opportunities that it possesses. This project or process was developed in Stillwater about 9 years ago, with great success. It went on to work with the city of Cambridge for downtown revitalization for a 6-month process. And then it was hired by the city of New Richmond to undertake their comprehensive plan, utilizing this process and keeping in mind that New Richmond had already contracted with another consultant to do their comprehensive engagement component. And after 2 meetings, they decided that that was not going in the direction that they wanted it to go. So they contacted me and I met with them and discussed how this process works. And I'll be honest with you, they were a little shy. They just had a process that didn't go very well, and I'm asking them to do something completely different, which is to let the community drive the process, let their ideas come to fruition as a result of their efforts. And they said, okay, we'll do it. And we also changed some of the particulars of the comprehensive plan as a document. We launched that. We worked with that community for about 7 months, and it won the American Planners Association Award for Innovation in Engagement in 2019 for the state of Wisconsin. So they went from one extreme to another. And I was subsequently hired by the Village of Pleasant Prairie to utilize this exact same process for 180-acre master plan development community for their downtown. And that went extremely well. And they're working together and moving that process forward with developers and so forth. So this project, or I should say this process, has been tested under various circumstances, and it has met the needs of every community that we utilize this process. Most recently was Pine City. Pine City was a comprehensive plan project that was started in the spring, and it concluded in late July. And I think we provided some information to you on some of the results from that process, as well as the city of New Richmond. And in New Richmond's case, that project included what's called a project portfolio. I'd be happy to pass this around. But this is an opportunity not just for the committee members to do a open house, which they do, to let the community come in and weigh in on their ideas and give more ideas. And also the final process is a community presentation in which they do presentations, a PowerPoint, and basically go through all the rationale of their projects and recommendations as a conclusion of this process. The New Richmond process did a project portfolio, which is another added step in which they actually do a lot more research on their recommendations and put them into this notebook form, which is utilized in phase 2 by the executive committee. So they package all these recommendations into something that's actionable for the municipality. I believe the information that was provided listed all of the projects that were actually enacted and successfully done within that book, and others that are pending, and other works that they're working on. The city of Pine City has been extremely aggressive in mobilizing all of their projects, including the $50,000 grant from the Blandon Foundation. So they've been able to leverage their community's work into, well, at a level that I've not seen. So it's tremendous what they've been able to do with the work that the residents put into that project. In terms of this project, I think Bob and I have been talking for what, 4 or 5 years on this process and an eventual comprehensive plan and the ability to work with all of you. In talking with Bob, we wanted to figure out what we wanted to offer in this process, and simply said, Bob says, offer me everything that New Richmond did, so let's see what we can do. And that's how this all came about and approved in July. So as you probably are aware, we did our first kickoff meeting in September. We were hoping that we'd have the usual turnout that we would normally get under these circumstances, and we were a little shy of that. So we did relaunch it 3 weeks ago, and we had more people come to this process. We've got 21 people on the committee right now, and we're going to be kicking off our very first meeting tomorrow night. They're very excited about being involved in this process, and they've been participating already with exercises that we've asked them to do to identify things that they love, things that can be improved upon, and things that are currently not in Somerset that they might want to see here. So we've already got them working on brainstorming what some of the things that we're working on. I also believe that you might have received the results of the survey that was done prior to the first kickoff. We had 147 respondents to that survey that was put together by MSA. And what I provided to you was a complete breakout of those questions with respect to the reflection of the subcommittees and the work that the committees will be doing. So we can actually have the people on the committee focusing on specific content based upon the content that they're working on. So it's hard to look at 45 pages of a summary and try to make sense of it. So, you had to make sense of it by moving things around. I also, looking through that information, it was done by respondents that both live in the village of Somerset and those who live outside Somerset. And by virtue of how MSA designed it, we could extract just responses from the village. So when you look through that information, you'll find that when it's a village specific, like in government, that those responses came from only the village residents, because they're taxpayers within your community, and a municipality is that relationship with them. When it comes to business, economic development, parks, trails, I included the respondents from all, because your community is patronized and visited on a daily basis by everyone who lives around you. So their input, their ideas is very helpful. I can't think of any community who wouldn't love to have others help them with ideas to make their own community better. So in this case, the more the merrier. So we wanted to make sure we included that information in there. So that's a very short summary of well, a long period of work. Do you have any questions that I can answer?
Yeah, I have a few questions. So do you have, so you mentioned that there are some people that are from the township there. Do you have a breakdown of about how many people are
Actually,
village or township?
we don't have anyone from the township, from what I can see.
Okay,
Um,
because my concern with that is I just, some of the things, so I did read the survey. Sorry, just want to pull it up here. And one of the main things, the first one was the trails. And I think the second one there was like a swimming pool. So as the second one is a swimming pool and a splash pad. So I'm just wondering, is our plan gonna include stuff like that? Because the cost of like a swimming pool and splash pad and those kinds of things, I don't know if those kinds of, if that's really realistic for the village to be buying, especially when there's swimming pools all around the community, and we have a beautiful river that we can use year round. So I guess that was more of a statement than a question, but will we be including that kind of stuff into the plan?
And I really should clarify also, one of the caveats to this process is that the word no doesn't exist. So I am not in this process to tell anyone on that committee what they should be thinking, what they should be doing, or what ideas they should be coming up with. That's not my role. My role is kind of like a coach, kind of a person to just make sure that stuff doesn't go outside the guardrails. But it's very, very wide in terms of landscape of what they can do research on, what they want to find other communities that have done, that have been very successful to either increase economic development or safety or community or anything that empowers a community to move forward in whatever direction it may desire. So when they're doing this, they're researching these ideas, and because of the nature of the committee, they actually vet themselves as they go through it. They'll have and I want them to have a long brainstorm list of almost anything that in theory could be possible, in theory. And they will work through that and they will figure out and start tossing out things that just may not make any sense. So they do get to a core group of recommendations that they're recommending. There's no one's bound to anything that they come up with in terms of the municipality. They're just trying to do the best job they can.
Okay, so that kind of leads into the next question I had is, so this plan that we're creating is just, it's a loose guideline. It's not anything that is required as far as what's to come of it.
And the importance of this process is that the traditional way of doing community engagement is usually a planner is hired as part of the process, and they will come up with the ideas on behalf of the municipality. That's what they get paid to do. That's why they go to school and they're highly accredited. The engagement component of that, however, is that once they've come up with their ideas, they'll have an open house. And the community will come if they're interested, and they will look at somebody else's work, and they probably don't live in the community. And they will kind of go nay, yay, okay, well, maybe, I don't know, and they'll leave. And it's like 20 minutes of interaction. And then the planner may go back and refine a few things based upon a couple scribbles on some drawing board. And they may hold a second open house and they'll come in and go, yeah, okay, looks a little better. And check off engagement and it's over. That truly has been traditional municipal engagement municipalities have been doing, and I've been to a lot of them in 20 years.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to discredit the community engagement. I think that's great. I think it's, I was at one of the meetings myself. I was at the first one. I'm glad we got 20 people signed up. So yeah, I don't want to belittle any of that. I think all that's great. But do we think that, in listing off some of the places that this plan has taken place, you listed off some larger cities. Do you think this plan fits well for a smaller city like Somerset, and specifically the village?
Most
Somerset.
Yeah, and I'll explain why. About roughly 3,000 people in your community. Pine Cities, 3,000 people. I did the comprehensive plan, same process for Turtle Lake. 1,200 people. in Pine, in Pleasant Prairie, that population was 23,000. We had 155 people show up for that kickoff meeting, which was great. I'm kind of going, okay, here we go. But by comparison, by percentage of participants on the committee versus population, Turtle Lake had a higher percentage. And what I find is the larger the community, and I could certainly say, St. Paul and Minneapolis, the larger it is, the more sophisticated it is, and the more harder it is to get people to really get involved and roll up their sleeves.
Yeah.
So
You understand that?
when you get into a small community, be it 1,200 or be it 3,000, and New Richmond was 9,000. People who live in that community know everybody in that community, or mostly everyone in that community, and they develop strong ties with the school system. They're invested far more than someone who lives in Minneapolis or St. Paul. And that's where this drive to try to improve the community and do it from their own hearts and their minds and their time and effort is pretty incredible.
Yeah. I think those are all the questions I had.
Hi, I'm Todd, by the way.
Nice to meet you.
The questions I have are gonna come out, similar to what Brandon had brought up. The information from the survey appeared, at least the version that we had, appeared to have responses from both the township and the village. And is this scenario being Somerset a unique situation because we're sitting in the middle of a township? Instead of like New Richmond, or there are people from outside that community involved in their process?
Yeah, there were some. And that's a question, I'd be honest with you, that municipalities wrestle with when we talk about how do we do this and who's included. And I let them decide, but my recommendation is with smaller communities in particular. Pine City, for example, said, hey, let's do our school district boundaries. Because that's obviously a wider scope than the virtual limits of the city. But then again, you still have people who live and work, maybe not within the city limits, but they work or go to school or participate in the activities and the services that are offered by the city itself. So it all depends upon really what the direction is from the municipality.
So then I guess the next question I would have. This community relative to size is very similar to Pine City. What was their initial response like in the initial community involvement number wise compared to what we had?
We held the kickoff at the technical college in their auditorium. And we had about 60 people show up for that.
For Pine City
Yes.
and versus,
Well, we had initially, I believe, 20 people for the first kickoff that we did. But some were out, town, well, actually quite a few were town, from the town. So we didn't have a precursor as to how to kind of work with that. And that was part of our discussion during that meeting was, where do you go? I mean, with that. So we felt it best to give the community one more good shot at understanding what this project was all about and to re-invite them to participate at the next kickoff and give them one more shot to help populate the
so
community.
in your experience, the number of people that are involved on the second one is what you would consider in your, like I said, in your history, successful or workable?
Yeah, it's workable. And I mentioned to Bob after the second meeting that part of this, and I'll be honest with you, when we did it for Stillwater, it was kind of design build. I mean, so we've been perfecting this as we've been going along, but there hasn't been a whole lot of changes to the process. But unless we need to, and in this instance, I'm more used to 30, 35, maybe 40 people on a committee, and there's a lot of latitude there, and you can kick off, those 6 subcommittees right from the get-go, and you could have 6 to 5 people populating each subcommittee. In this instance, after the turnout from the second one, I had to kind of recalibrate and go, well, okay, We may not have a lot of bodies in the room to do this, and I always say it's not the quantity at the end of the day for the project, it's the quality. And yes, over time, some people will drop out for numerous reasons. I think we had 3 people move out of Pleasant Prairie during our project. So there are things you just cannot help or avoid. At the same time, we always want to have people join the committee, and we've had people join the committee halfway through and nearly done with it.
Is that common?
Yeah.
For people to
It is.
join in as the,
Provided they
program
know
that's
about
going on.
it. So we have to always get the word out that, you know, this is a bus that always drives with the door open, as I usually explain. And we're on a journey, but people can hop on and they can hop off if they have to or desire to, but they can hop on anytime they want. And I encourage people to continue to sign up. Absolutely.
So what do you see as the differences between Pine City and us? I mean, the population's fairly close, right?
Mhm.
I actually went up and watched that presentation that somebody had recorded and put it on YouTube. Doing some looking, it appears, right? That I went through the budget that was provided. And the end cost, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but what I'm looking at, I think in front of me is $44,000.
Mhm.
The Pine City released that, said that they paid $10,500.
Mhm.
What's the difference between, I mean, obviously, it's a lot of money, right?
Right.
And so what are you doing differently for Somerset than what was done at Pine City?
Pine City was projected to be a 4-month project, which is half the size of the New Richmond project. So I took New Richmond's work and worked at the proposal from New Richmond's work on the values that were needed to do that. Further request the conversation I had about.
So basically, this is New Richmond.
The budget's
better
new,
or for
yes,
worse, yeah.
yes.
So I guess some of the questions I would have, given the number of people that are involved, 5 podcasts, what do those do?
And that was something Bob and I discussed. I have a podcasting service for municipalities that they can certainly utilize at their discretion. We did it with Pine City. We did 1 podcast to help promote the project. Sometimes it's feasible, sometimes it's not. We didn't do a second one because we didn't find it to be feasible. I don't think, given the circumstances here and the size of the committee and so forth, that a podcast would work. So I would certainly, not have that probably be part of the budget. So I think we'd probably just take that off.
Well, I think there are a lot of questions that are around. Why shouldn't we do a $10,000 500 version of this instead of a $44,000 version of this?
Well, that comes down to the time and effort and I guess the interest and the carryover post-project. Pine City has an attitude towards the project that was extremely supportive. And that's why they've been able to usher an awful lot of the success after the completion of that project. So I guess when we talked, it was kind of a question of, after the community's completed the process, do we want it to languish, or do we want the horsepower and dedication to continue? Now, Mike Gaynor, who happens to be the community development director, has the energy and the capacity and the drive and the enthusiasm and support for this project before it was already kicked off. He's an individual who's championing it, and that's one of the reasons why they've been able to do so much with it. When we had our conversation about what we're going to do with this project, 2 things were really kind of discussed: the project portfolios, which takes extra time to create because we have extra meetings to give them time to create that. And then also we tacked on the phase 2 facilitation process, which is to answer the question, what do we do now? So when this project's concluded, be it 4 months, be it 5 months or 7 months. That committee will have produced a lot of materials and recommendations and PowerPoint presentations and comments from the open house from residents. But if there isn't the enthusiasm or the horsepower within the municipal structure to marshal that forward, then it kind of languishes. And that's understandable. That's just the municipal environment sometimes. But it would take someone like a Mike Gaynor to make sure that those things continue on in the fashion that they have for them. Absent that, in phase 2, I'm in a position to keep that on track and help Somerset move that process through so you get implementation or viability from the work that people have done.
So. And forgive me, because this is, I mean, we haven't seen this for a very long time. This includes both phases from what you're referring to.
That's, phase
Correct.
1 and phase 2.
What's the breakdown from phase 1 to phase 2 from a dollar perspective?
I believe I did it from a menu on that, but I do have the numbers here too. For you. The phase 2 was 92.50
Oh. So,
of
okay,
that.
phase 1 is 25.5.
Yes, correct.
So that 25.5 is $15,000 more than what Pine City got. I'm trying to figure out, is this the best use of local resources, right? I don't doubt you've obviously had some really good success.
Mhm.
I've heard from people both in the village and outside of the village, right, constituents, if you will, that they're like, yeah, there's not seem to be a lot of excitement for this now.
Mhm.
We're going into the cold time of the year, right? Holidays are coming up. I don't know how that plays. But is there, I guess in my mind, I would like to understand and be convinced that it's worth the extra $15,000 for better for worse. For us to pay the 25.5 instead of, hey, give us the $10,500 deal.
My convincing to you would not probably satisfy you, to be honest with you. Only from the standpoint that it's really the work that the committee does that will satisfy the municipalities in their work. I can say, I mean, when I met with New Richmond, I had the finance director, I had Mike Darrow, I had Beth Thompson, and they're looking at me with deer in the headlights when I asked them, well, you have to let the community drive the point. And they said, well, what ideas are you going to come up with? And I said, I can't tell you. I have no idea. I mean, that was probably in their respects, the worst meeting that they could have had, is because I couldn't tell them what this project was going to deliver. They had to do it on faith. They had to do it on faith. And that is the kind of work that they did. And it wins an award. I can't explain that other than when you give your community a chance to actually be vested in project and problem solution and go out there and find great ideas. Let them drive the community for 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Let them work together and find these solutions. The outcome, as even Mike Gaynor mentioned in his thing, goes well beyond their expectations, and Beth Thompson was the same. So that's why I say, what I say isn't going to satisfy that question, because I can't answer that question accurately. Only the work in the committee can answer that question. But unfortunately, that's further on down the road.
So I guess to straight cut to the chase, is there a quote, right? A roadmap,
Mhm.
a $10,500 roadmap that we as Somerset can have to gauge and look if there's huge success and huge interest, right? I mean, we know what can happen after that. But to commit this small of a community in a village to that kind of money, with, and look, I don't know, but from what I've been told is minimal support or excitement. I'm a little hesitant to do that.
Mhm. Do you have suggestions?
Give us a $10,500 version of what you're doing. I guess that would be that would be my suggestion. Anybody else have any questions about any of this? I don't know how many. you
I
have.
had one more question about the
Yeah.
contract, because when I read it, and we had discussed it, with the village, employees. They had said that, our involvement should be, they should be involved, but it should be limited, but where I read this, it says we are to provide, food, large 24-36 colored maps, posting tape, volume tracing paper, other materials as needed, hospitality arrangement, snacks, all that stuff. So is the expectation that, the expectation is for us to provide snacks for all the meetings and make sure that there's cardboard cutouts and everything like that for that, or what's expected of the village employees?
Well, in this instance, what we're looking at is, it's during the proverbial dinner hour, from 5 to 7. So, having something for them to munch on or drink is kind of nice. And the municipalities have always chipped in to do that.
And that's outside the.
Yeah, whatever that, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everyone could, because that was a point that we had heard.
The Pine City project did not include an open house. They requested one later on, because it was outside the budget to do that
Open house,
for the community.
is that before or after?
That's before the presentation.
So that was before, that's already been done. Is what
Well, the
you're saying.
project's already been done, yes. But as part of the project that we did for New Richmond, again, everything reflects what we did for New Richmond. We have an open house, and so that open house is about 3 weeks before we do the final presentation to the board or chamber and the community. So with Pine City, because they had a very limited budget, we didn't have a open house scheduled because it wasn't feasible. We have to have at least a minimum set of weeks for them to have time to do all of this work and to prepare for the presentation. So the Pine City presentation, or the number of months or weeks that was required, is what's kind of required for that dialed down version. But it didn't permit for an open house. Now, as it turned out, as they were seeing what was going on with their ideas and how things were developing, they wanted to have an open house. And so I gave them what it might cost to do that, and they said, yeah, okay, we'll do that. When I closed out the project, I didn't charge them. I gave them the same budget that we started with. So it also doesn't include the portfolios. It obviously didn't include phase 2. So it didn't, we did one podcast, but I didn't charge you for that. So yeah, we watered it down quite a bit.
So would you have a problem submitting to us? Right, or Bob, I guess, in this instance. A $10,500 version of your plan. Is that possible?
Anything's possible.
Okay. You want to do that?
I'll do whatever the board wants to do. It's a board decision. I'm happy to entertain whatever works for the municipality.
So I can work with Todd next coming, excuse me. This next coming week. Maybe put 2 or 3 proposals together.
So I understand what
Show you what that looks like.
this was originally discussed prior to with staff and it was kind of back and forth, and that's how this number come to the board of 40.
Yeah, I did it. I did 2
Right?
presentations to the plan commission. And then presentation to the committee or the board.
So it was a planning commission and then
Yeah, we fully vetted. And unanimously approved at each occasion.
Do we make a motion then?
There's one.
So this is a discussion only item,
Discussion only.
Yeah.
it's a workshop, but if there's kind of a general consensus. Or I'm not hearing any objection, maybe Bob can work with Todd to put together a plan.
And then we can review when we're next in session. Is that would?
Fine with me?
I just have one question. Is that going to affect anything that you have and going forward?
I would say we can have an effect. There's been a delay of already a month, getting this going. I would like to proceed as planned with the meeting tomorrow. Whether we shorten it doesn't really have much to do with how we started. It does have to do with what we end up with, because less time we have means less deliverables.
On the
But
back end.
but it doesn't interrupt anything that I have planned for our first meeting or second meeting.
Yeah, definitely we don't wanna stop. I would say, I don't think we should stop anything that we have started, because that is good, but we apologize for having to rehash some of this stuff. Since some of us are rather new, and there's been some changing positions and stuff like that, so. We appreciate you coming down.
My only objective is to have a successful project. And I'm hoping we have everyone's support to make that happen. From official staff and committee members, so. That's all I ask.
Thank you, Todd.
Any other questions?
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate your question. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
All right, next we'll back to Public Works, public comments. 2 minutes per person, 14 minutes per topic. Any comments from anyone in the public? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go to next is discussion MSA update memo.
Yes, good evening, board.
Evening.
A couple of items I want to touch upon. We will have one of our water resource specialists in town on the 10th. And to review some erosion repairs and some pond dredging that Bob and his group would like to see resolved. There's several areas of erosion that need to be repaired and some ponds that may need to be dredged out to over time. What happens? Stormwater ponds, they're built to basically capture the sediment, but as a result of capturing that sediment, they fill up over time and they need to be dredged. So you can expect after that review for us to come forward with a proposal to do some erosion correction and some potential further evaluation of the ponds. Also, next month at the same time, we'll be looking at brushing off and amending the curb gutter sidewalk improvement project. Only a portion of that has been done to date. And so there's some additional items we're talking with Public Works about adding, as well as just revising the plans to exclude the work that was completed as part of the Blue Spruce stuff. Also,
Everything that was on the original was still gonna be part of the
yep, and they, the highest priority stuff was completed as part of Blue Spruce.
safety issue stuff was
Yeah.
taken care of.
So if you wanna, so it'll be, we can revisit what the actual scope of those other items are. But there's a median, for instance, out near the cemetery that constantly gets hit to some of those things that would like, Public Works would like to see you consider removing, just so that target isn't there anymore. Seems as soon as they repair and put up the light, somebody else decides to take it out.
You haven't hit the tree though yet. Haven't gotten that far.
The lights are more of a target than.
Yeah.
You're onto the light like a moth, right? So this past month too, we also talked about, on the bridge, if you see the small picture in our update, there's a 40-year-old chain link fence that sits on there that should, the board should consider replacement of that with either a black type of chain link fence or, some sort of a railing. Chain link fence is probably going to add another 150 to 200,000 to the scope.
And where railing would probably add another 100,000 to that. Okay,
Any of that gonna come out of that grant money that we got?
Trail money?
it's no grant money, but you know, there was, once you had the pleasure of inheriting that bridge, there was some funds that were set aside. And it would come out of that presumably, and I don't know if you know off the top of your head how much that is, but.
Oh, there's already, yeah, someone.
Yeah, so when they transferred, the state transferred that, they give us money for future repairs.
That's where you're talking about funding it.
Yes.
You know, and so there's a life expectancy of 25, 30 years, and you know, they have to run some equipment across there to. To plow snow and some things, and you know, it gets a little precarious. Is that a good way of putting it, Tom? And for some-
Yeah, I just asked the question with the chain link fence, you know, the railing protecting somebody from going on the river. I said, what's the protocol for it? And the structural guy said, well, 25 years. Something like that. So if we're at 40. We should probably.
Because if someone fell through it.
Well, that's the thing, I
He
don't
doesn't
know, how
know.
we know the integrity of it, how it fails and somebody.
Don't you go up there and test it? Push it.
I have somebody else do that.
Oh, okay, good, good.
Yeah, and then also there's some additional lighting that, you know, there'd be some coordination with Excel. Was it a light was damaged and removed, right? And-
From the river, 15 years ago.
And it's not as easy as like, you know, right now they're in grouted sleeves. And you can't just assume that you can pull those out. And, you know, put new posts in, so what's gonna have to happen is they're gonna have to be cut. Right now, what, you know, the concrete underneath is extra thick for each one of those railings. And what would happen is we can't reuse those sleeves, and so they'd have to go basically between the middle. of Right now, they're whatever, 6 feet apart, we'd have to go in the middle and then, you know, drill some bolts and some plates. To secure that new fencing. To the concrete deck there. And so there would be an additional $14,000 in design, so we'd be looking at a contract amendment. Should you go forward with these improvements? And then, so essentially that would cover the plan sheets and provisions to replace the pedestrian chain link fence with poly-coated chain link fence on new anchorage. Provisions for cleaning and resealing the concrete parapet with a darker sealer. I don't know if that lasted, the lighter sealer took about a day before somebody decided to ride up on it and make it less attractive. And then also coordinating with Excel for enhancements of the lighting for the bridge. You know, at this point, we are recommending, or Bob can speak up, but we are recommending that you go with the poly-coated chain link fence. You know, I think that would look attractive. If you want to match that current railing that's sitting on top of the barrier that was replaced recently, you know, certainly that adds extra cost, but would be equally attractive.
So with the railing, that would just be the railing up to it or the railing going along the bridge? When you say railing,
Oh, see that railing in the picture there, on top of the, yeah,
that needs to be replaced?
no, the railing, you know, the Cadillac version would look very similar to that. Instead of the chain link fence,
I got it, those are the options.
yeah, yeah, but, you know,
And then you would need the extra, so you would, the railing would need the extra posts or the chain link fence? Or
no, the chain link fence, what we'd have to do is we'd have to cut each one of those posts out and then put new chain link fence in a similar location.
Kind of on the outside of it, the post.
Yeah, we believe there's enough room that there's also a conduit that goes along there that we gotta try to fit between, but we've looked at it enough where we're confident we can drill these new bolts and plates and avoid that conduit and,
What does the conduit carry?
just for the lighting
Yeah.
Power.
power.
That's, I was just anything. Crucial,
Power.
pretty crucial.
Yeah. So, but, so it just. It's a good time to do it, could you do it a couple, 5 years from now? You certainly could, but then you'd be shutting down at least lanes of the bridge, because to do that work over the edge, it's gonna require one of those kind of creeper, snooper trucks or whatever to do some of that work. And so long as you have the bridge shut down for those other reasons, it would be a good time just to take care of it as well. And it increased the overall attractiveness.
So is that 150 to 200, including the additional engineering, so to speak, of that stuff, or is that in addition to?
Well, that's in addition to, I mean, that's a pretty broad range, it's, what we've done is, we've talked to contractors and we've looked at past bids. We don't have any, recent bids out at the DOT yet, but we can look at last year's bids and make some assumptions. And so hopefully those are conservative numbers and do include the 14,000 within that range, but that's our current estimate. And if you wanted to, we could set up the bid package to separate that out, bid it as an alternate. So you could see what that price is and decide, to move forward with it,
This,
now.
this,
That makes sense, but I like
is
that.
this covered under the money that was left with the bridge, or are we paying for this? That's the wrong question. I'm asking the wrong question.
There's a bridge fund. I don't know how much is. in the bridge fund. I was
Bridge
asked,
slush fund.
asked Andrew if you have money in the bridge fund.
I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but there's, quite a bit of money.
Was there 1 million? How much was it initially?
Million three.
1.3 million?
And that was 2000.
Six.
So what are those funds for, just for the bridge?
Bridge repairs, yeah, bridge repairs, upkeep, maintenance.
And does that include, I realize it isn't complete beautification, but I'm using your term, it makes it more attractive. Does that include this kind of stuff too? Okay.
Mhm.
Well, it's a safety.
It's-
aspect.
Everything is integrity on a bridge, and then you can do things to make it look prettier. And a lot of people have an issue with how that bridge looks. So it showcases it looks terrible and it's ugly here, so it makes the rest of the town look.
We replace it, and then like 2 days later, there's big black.
Yeah, so good stuff. Very good side by side right up the wall.
Some of that money, that 1 million or whatever is used to fix up the chain link fence on it already, right? That they did that work on last year, I believe, or was it this spring?
That's the parapet.
That was in the range of what, 250, 300,000?
It was expensive.
Yeah,
Again, that's a safety.
Yep.
So
No, I just,
debris
I
goes
wanted
on.
to see that was the money that was
Yep.
spent for that, and so this would be similar.
and so this is a fracture critical bridge. And so it gets inspected every other year. So there's been, close eye on it. And, these joints are just, it's one of those things that it was decided to make those improvements last year, but with the, with the erosion of these expansion joints and the water getting down in there, they're not designed like that anymore. But now is the time to do that work because of all the work going on in Churchill Road. And we need to shut down, rip off the Band-Aid and, ruin everybody's summer, but, we've got 2 summers.
This is the bridge work next year you're referring to.
Correct, yeah.
Look, I'd like you, if it's possible, I like the idea that you were talking about having it bid out like you were talking.
Yeah,
With an
You know,
alternate.
just so you, as an alternate.
I like it.
And with the difference besides just the chain link,
Oh, you want to bid both of them?
I think.
So with the railing, would that be the concrete? Basically a concrete bottom, kind of like what the bridge looks like now with the.
No, it would be, whatever, that 4 foot, greater. Oh, all the way down, so it would go all the way, as the same height as the fence.
Yeah. But more open,
Yeah,
you're saying.
so, we can certainly do that I don't think that would impact without, anything, but I'll double check with my bridge and structural folks. I'm sure that the way they would attach that to the bridge would be the same. Regardless if it was a railing or a chain link fence, so it shouldn't increase the cost they need to do that. And, bring forward out, for your consideration at your meeting next month. And also, I suppose we could come armed with how much money is left in
Mhm.
the bridge account.
So you're gonna quote both option as,
Yeah, we can,
So,
right, okay.
yeah, should break it out and figure out how much is the
Yeah.
bridge fund and move
Perfect.
on to the next one. Maybe, we're good, sorry to. Don't need to ramble on this one anymore.
Is there anything more?
No,
No, there's not.
sorry,
I'm kidding.
sorry.
no,
If you have any questions, email me and I'll check with the updates. How's that?
Yeah.
We can maybe get through these next couple.
Sorry.
Agenda things.
I know we've only gotten through like two so far.
yeah, I'll be, a couple other items on my update I wanted to mention.
I want, yeah. I want to ask one.
The wastewater treatment facility. We now have the support documentation, so, for pay up for, which was for September work. That's gonna be coming in front of the board.
That was when we talked about.
Yep, that'll be coming in front of the board too. Also, there were some questions related to the Churchill Road reconstruction, and we had started the dialogue with the busing in the school. So unless there's any other questions, I'm happy to talk all night.
It doesn't take a minute to do that.
Sorry.
So that for this summer then? Coming up,
The bridge, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
and the whole bridge is gonna be shut off.
Yep, basically after, before school lets out. Yeah, Memorial Day, so they have enough time to do the utility work and get the street work all done in one season,
How long?
2.5 months.
2.5 months.
That's not bad.
Well,
It's
Yeah,
it's 11-mile detour. When you take that bridge out of the equation.
unfortunately, it's something I know that we hadn't had a full plan yet developed on it. That's something we've been trying to get communicated out to the community for the last 8 months, 9 months.
There's no way they can do half and half to keep one lane.
Unfortunately not. We talked to them even about a safety deal, about trying to maintain it for fire trucks and see even open in one lane or the other, and they want to shut it all down.
And the school's gonna help us communicate out. They've got, their communications as well, at the school district, and we'll be touching on the school families as well as what we do.
Like Chuck said, we met with the schools, the bus company, and the next step would be meeting with business owners and getting a list and setting up a meeting with them only to discuss how deliveries are. So EJ will be included, Johnny will be included, our business park and everybody else, but
There hasn't been no meetings with businesses or nothing yet.
well, the problem is DOT is letting us in February, so we don't know what date we're working. That's the only problem. So we know it's gonna be right after school. What the staggering for Churchill is, because Churchill, that's gonna be a great big trench.
So when does school get out?
That's second week in June.
July, August.
Yeah, the DOT has to start their project earlier. And they just finalized their plans instead of sent them down to Madison for the final approvals.
We've been harping with the DOT trying to get some kind of a timeline so we can get it communicated around here for the last 4 months.
Well, the
I've been on-
DOT is not gonna use this timeline because they don't have a contractor, so the contractor can't give them the timeline if there's no contractor. That's kind of.
But we do know now,
Taking it.
now we know whether the letting date, they're gonna open bids on the 13th of February. So.
One quick question on growing wings. You got something going on with the CSM to get municipal water up to that area? Is that holding up that development?
No,
No,
we're
we're,
working concurrently.
Okay.
And I still haven't seen a revised development agreement from their attorney.
John,
So is the reason it's going so late is because of school? They could have started earlier, but they're not doing it because of school.
Shutting the bridge down.
Yeah.
And
I'm just asking a question, but wouldn't it make more sense for the businesses? That the summer businesses coming into town that that we survive off of and people survive off of town?
Realistically, you can't start construction before May.
Road restrictions.
Road restrictions and just inclement weather, so
I understand that, it's 30 days, that's a whole month.
well, then that's what they'll be allowed to start in May. So if I
I
wasn't
thought you
clear,
said they can't
yeah,
start-
They're starting some of the original stuff, the preliminary, but they're not shutting the bridge down.
they may be, depending on what the contractor schedule looks
Yeah.
like, they may have to shut the bridge down, and we've told the school that as well. Because the sooner they can get in there and get those utilities and reopen on that intersection, that would be the hope. The hope wouldn't be, it would be permanently shut down, but depending on the contractor's schedule, because they have to start at the low end and work their way up, and the low end is Main Street and Churchill. And so to get all that deep sewer in the middle of the intersection installed, they gotta close it down. They don't necessarily have to close the bridge down, but in fact, they are closing the bridge down because it'll be so deep in the middle of your road.
So yeah, this is something, again, that we've been trying to get timelines, and I've been trying to get stuff myself, actually just getting out the communication to people. We haven't had information really to pass along. Based on the state having issues with their contracts or having engineers working on it or whatnot, but it is something that I want to make sure that we communicate clearly to the community and internally, so that we know it. This is the first I heard that it might start before school gets out, so my understanding always before, and what I told people is that it was gonna be after school got out, so.
Once they started looking at that schedule, they're just like, we can't do it.
Right.
Gotta start earlier.
we found that all up 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
So we just have to stay on top of communication, but we'll make sure to, keep the public informed as much as we can as we go forward and get closer to this.
thank you.
All right, moving on, discussion street use permit, Somerset Chamber light up the night.
And, as you can see, they're waiting.
Caleb?
I'm here.
Mm,
is he muted?
I just unmuted. Can you hear me?
I think your volume's off. That matters.
Can you hear me now?
It should be fine for them.
No, it's,
I'll keep talking until you can hear me.
we can't hear you yet.
Thank you.
Well, now we can
There we
hear you.
I heard,
There you go.
You hear me now?
Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. I was instructed by Felicia to just attend the meeting and I guess answer any questions or go over the couple items that we were hoping the village could assist us with. Was everybody able to get the letter that I passed along with the application?
Someone was late tonight.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's will be down here.
No.
I would ask them.
Do we have that in our packet?
That's online.
I can run through them quickly in the efforts to save a little time. I was told that we wouldn't be able to have a police officer supplied by the village during the event. The committee wanted me to ask if we were able to hire a police officer as a part of just being on site security. And if so, what would that cost be? The next item was hoping that if the permit or the application for the shutdown of the street went through, that the village would be able to supply the barricades and set those up. We were hoping for a power source. So the intent is to put up a pole style tree at the back of the lot between Sportsman and the tattoo parlor. Approximately 15 feet tall. We've got a tree service, McCauley's, and then a tree expert helping to guy up. They call it guy wiring. I'm not a tree expert myself. To secure that, we would like to get it in the ground, secured probably 3 to 4 weeks prior to the event. And hopefully leave it up through the first of the year. So roughly, we're talking about a month that this would be there. Our committee's concerns were obviously safety, and then folks potentially backing into the stakes or whatever that would be where the guy wires are. So our plan is to use a lot of cones and even yellow caution tape to highlight those prior to physically decorating them so they're a part of the good looking tree structure. So we're hoping there was an ability to get a power source just for those lights.
And we don't have a way of getting power there. So you'll have to ask one of the neighboring buildings.
Okay, we certainly can do that.
Okay.
We're gonna supply our own trash bins for the event. I was hoping that the village would be able to just get rid of the trash bags at the end of it. I'm estimating 5 or 6 bags of trash. Not a lot.
You know, that you emailed out.
What's that?
On your email, you have a list with 5 items there.
Yes,
Yep, so number 2, it's fine, we'll bring barricades down, you put them where you want them.
perfect.
3, we don't have power, so we're not able to provide you any power. 4, that's fine, we'll pick them up Saturday morning. And number 5, yeah, we can plow a lot for you. If it snows,
What's their power alternative? They can bring.
borrowing it from somebody or a generator.
We can figure that out.
Where's it actually going? Is it going in that lot? That way,
It's going in the,
red?
going between the tattoo place and Spring Creek, is that correct?
Yes, correct.
They're gonna close that off completely because people have been pulling in there and parking a lot. That's gonna have to be barricaded off and
So Main Street's gonna be barricaded off.
Correct. Yes.
I mean, while the tree is up, that whole lot's closed off, right?
So our intention is that that the lot would not be barricaded the entire time that the tree is up. Because we're hoping for roughly a month-long time that the tree is there. But it would be at the back of the lot in the center, so toward the library, if you will. And well marked so that it wouldn't impede, at least based on my observations, very much parking.
We have a guesstimate on just rough outline, rough size that it would be with just the area that we would cover with the stakes in and all that stuff and the guy wires. See a lot of people park in that parking lot. I know they're probably not supposed to, but I see a lot of people using that parking lot.
I think it would be roughly a 20-foot diameter space. So if you had the center pole and then you'd had 4 guy wires coming off that were securing it so it didn't blow over or anything like that.
Right. Yeah, like I say, yeah, that is really going a lot,
Yeah,
so.
I pasted off one day and you'd roughly have more than 3/4 of the existing lot still available.
All right. Other comments or questions on that at all from the board?
If there's any questions, if you guys think of after we're done here, just email them and we can bring them forward to the regular board meeting too.
They're talking about vendors too and food truck. Is that gonna be in that lot as well? Or is that gonna be out on the street?
Both.
Yeah, so the detour will be down spring, up there, field back to spring. Will be open. It's relative.
Just for one
It's
night?
simple. Yes,
Yep.
Four
2 hours.
so it's pretty simple.
It's on this application.
Yeah.
The one that we're supposed to read.
Mhm.
There was nothing to be done there?
You're all busy. I understand.
Maybe.
All right,
Maybe.
well, I think we're, everyone else's, our comments or questions are all answered, so I think we can probably move forward. Thank you, Caleb.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a great evening. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Joe. Okay, next up, discussion, Bruce Lane improvements, pay application number 2, final.
So this pay application is for $14,824.61. It's essentially releasing the remaining retainage on the project. Project is complete. We've got their closing documentation and we're recommending that, you pay application 2 final. And at your next board meeting.
So because it's a working workshop, we don't have to do any
Nope.
action on it. We're just talking about it and then we'll probably bring it up there.
Correct. Unless you have comments or questions about it.
Pretty straightforward.
Do you have any questions on that down here? Anyone else? All right. We'll move on. Next up, discussion, sending year in review notice out yearly to residents. So this is something that we brought up at the planning commission. I think is where we were talking about it. Just something to make the community aware of some of the things like the trails grant that we were awarded this year and other things and how we can communicate that and make sure that the community is aware. And so I'd mentioned the idea of, do we send out a letter? Well, I did just see yesterday, I think it was, that the chamber has a new website or a new letter that they're sending out and having some things there. So I was gonna recommend that we look at that as a possible option versus, sending out something new and different if we can work through them and that. to
We
promote
do
some of these
actually
things.
send something out every year around at the same time as the tax bills.
Okay,
the tax bills, and then it's mainly information on things here and the winter parking guidelines, Christmas tree pickup, the fire department. So
Okay.
that's something that could be added to as well.
Bridge closures.
Yeah.
Mm,
Mhm.
Exactly.
so anyone have any thoughts or comments on that from the standpoint of the year in review notice or working with the chamber on that? I think it's a great idea. Okay, next discussion ordinance change to prohibit construction on public property. So this is in our packet. I went through and just kind of typed this up the other day. You can actually flip it all the way over to the back, section 12-1-6. This is a rough draft. Obviously can be adjusted. I did send it out to Anders earlier this week. Basically, what we're looking at is that there. you
What page
can't-
is that?
It's the
On the
last
very
page.
last page.
Last page, Don?
Yeah, that whole paragraph. So this is basically saying if anything is to get built on public property, it has to go through Public Works, has to go through the board. The work has to be done by a contractor that is, or by village employees or a contractor assigned by the village. You guys can kind of read the rest of it and look over. The village engineer would have to sign off on it and approve before use, also before construction could begin. And then everything must meet the International Builders Code. and conform to, the Americans with Disabilities Act. So,
What kind of stuff does this cover?
Everything,
everything.
No, put an example.
stairs. at a park.
Why would the public go to a park and build stairs?
They've done it.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right.
So
Now
It's not just for that, but it's any other structure. If someone wants to build something, they want to, hey, we want to pay for a shelter somewhere. And then they go out and just try to do it. No, it has to go through a process. So-
Okay, so aside from the stairs, is that common?
No,
it's completely really unprecedented. I think if it had happened in any other municipality, the individual would have been arrested.
Well, actually, you know, what's happened before in this township with the stairs on the other side of you know, they're all built by, you know, private individuals and
Yeah,
were maintained by private individuals for 20-some years and it's perfectly acceptable.
Okay, so I just want to be clear, right? This is all because of the stairs.
Yes.
That's why this is going in place? Okay,
It's-
gotcha. All right,
It's,
sorry.
in essence, it's to protect the village so that we don't have things going forward. Then we have a plan, say, here's what it is. We have an ordinance against it. There's no question mark. There's no gray area on it. That was my thought on it. Obviously, I'm not the only one making the decision or anything else. It's the rest of you. If you determine that we don't want this, that's fine.
I was trying to understand, like, are we talking about a massage booth at a baseball game? I mean, I don't know what we're. Now it
Right.
makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a permanent structure. It's not something that is just a temporary thing that someone puts up a tent or whatever and, you know, for.
I can't imagine why we would let anybody do a permanent structure on public.
Right.
Would we?
No, all right. We
Did
should
you or
probably
would you?
just probably put it through.
So
Whatever we.
just-
for
in
consideration.
terms of, in terms of,
Consideration.
you know, there are other parts,
Plus you have
there are other parts of your code that do prohibit, interfering or otherwise, you know, interfering or defacing or destroying or removing, property that's part of the village of Somerset. You've got other street regulations that obviously people can't just build things in the right of ways. You have other ordinances that prohibit any ill use of other property within any park or parkway. So, I mean, there are ordinances that I think address the situation that happened, but apparently there was a question on the authority of the village to enforce these ordinances. And the village let this construction occur. But I think moving forward to have more clarity, and it might even go beyond construction, and that's, I think you'd broaden it out even to include, you know, installation, repairs, removal, replacement, that whole scope. So there's no question moving forward, at least as the parks.
Is this a new ordinance or was there an ordinance prior to this?
This is just a new section of the village.
Wasn't there already an ordinance in place?
There is an ordinance, there are other ordinance provisions that. Well, I'm not gonna get into whether the individual violated them or not. The individual was served a letter saying to stop. The individual did not stop, even though there were ordinances in place. And I'll leave it at that.
So,
Right, there was, that's my question. There was an ordinance in
John,
place.
please.
So,
Raise your hand.
so
if you want to
my,
talk
so
to
my,
Colin.
you know, my point is, and I think the point from the president is moving forward. As issues may come up in public settings, providing something that's crystal clear. From an enforcement perspective. I understand why he's proposing it and. You know, that this is something I would tweak just a little bit, but
so I use the collective we. The village was on the board about whether to enforce or how enforceable the current stuff was. So now he made it extra good. Is that accurate, kind of?
That was my take. on it,
Okay,
yes.
all right. And this is because of stairs.
Again, yes.
Well, it's also to prevent any other individual from, you know, like say they wanted to come in and wanted to do something. You know, certain individuals like putting up, there's a discussion about putting up a sign, welcome to Somerset sign, right? That's coming in, there's been some talk about that.
Right.
And that kind of stuff needs to be vetted and dealt with before it's just boom, it shows up here. So
Has
that's,
that happened before?
No, there's talk of doing that. Is what people have been requesting and talking of doing. So again, and part of this is just, this is an idea, a thought that we can go through just to help solidify things, get rid of gray areas. Unfortunately, what happened this summer happened, and I just want to make sure that we have something in place. My opinion on it is have something in place so people just don't say, well, this person did, now we can do it, and it just snowballs into something that is ridiculous. So
And there are limits on placing signs in right of ways already, but
again. Yes, John,
So my question once again, so there was an ordinance in place, but you're just adding to it to make it more stricter.
I would say yes.
And the old board gave him permission to do that though, against that ordinance.
Mhm.
Some portions of it, yes, I would say.
I just, I
Ult-
thought.
But I wasn't at the meeting to say that.
ultimately,
Why I asked, because now it said there wasn't.
ultimately, the village has control over its property. And it can determine what it wants to allow on its own property. You have that authority in the state statute. Which, so
I don't want to be.
the previous board made a decision. That's a policy call for the board. And moving forward, there's a proposed ordinance to further clarify this moving forward. So there's an organized process if this is ever going to occur again. I think, does that summarize it, Doug?
I would say yes.
What is the fate of the stairs in question? If they weren't put in right to code, right? There's no agreement on who's gonna take care of them. If anybody, do they need maintenance? I mean, I don't know. But what's the fate of those stairs? Has that been decided?
I think that'll be a board decision at some point. It hasn't been decided as of yet that I'm aware of.
Is there any,
where is that
Well,
on the agenda?
is there any
we have-
exposure?
Well, I think there is based off of just my opinion, it's not a legal opinion, is that there is exposure because they don't meet the IDC,
Well,
my understanding.
And I guess, we're not getting into a discussion on the agenda item with what do we do with the stairs. I think that can be a separate agenda. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Be the open meetings wet blanket on your question, but I think. Moving forward, that is something that you can look at in this ordinance. Where if you are going to allow this type of thing to happen in the future. You can look at providing some type of financial assurance. From whoever's gonna do it, so there's adequate funds to make repairs if they're needed.
Stairs.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Stairs.
You wanna-
That's just,
Is there a consensus to move forward?
Yes, please.
I think we'll put that on the agenda for next week.
You
I'll
I'll make a couple adjustments and we'll come back.
Yep. And then we'll get that out so people can review that in advance. All right, moving on, public safety, we'll do public comment, 2 minutes person, 14 minutes per topic for items on there. John, do you want to make any public comment on there or?
Do you want me to talk now about the Sandy Christmas or when it comes up on the agenda?
We can, we'll wait a minute on that, I guess. Anyone else have any public comment online or anything for any of the items for public safety? No, okay. All right, next item, discussion, General Sands Christmas Village.
Hey, John, I've got a 10-page contract for you. You guys are already in a year already, it's a new board, we might as well break, it's already been a year, hasn't it?
Got a new pen?
I knew COVID was over when you were back in here yelling at me.
Believe me, I thought about it when I came in the other day and I'm like, I haven't been to a meeting for Christmas, oh my God.
So basically, and I can let John talk about too, what we did last year for you guys, and some of the stuff we went through is allowing the use of concrete pillars or barriers along the road for their walking path from the parking lot up to the Sam's. And I think that was really about the only thing that from a public safety or anything standpoint that we had a concern on last year that we worked through, was that,
There's improved, parking and traffic pattern that went into place.
right?
Worked out.
I guess anything else you want to add, John, or?
Not really. I mean, that's all I was gonna say. For the new board members, we bought that 40 acres last year prior to the Sam's Christmas Village. And as you know, if you were here, like 2 years ago, it was a disaster. Traffic was backed up.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask that question if we've done.
It was-
Some stuff to relieve that, cause yeah, I do remember it was, which
Yeah.
that's awesome that we're bringing people into the village, that's great. But-
Right. So what we bought that 40 acres from the concert site. And then they bought, we actually did a flip flop. They bought the 8 acres of the parking lot on the other end of down. And we're working
So
together
then people are just parking and then.
on
walking
it. So,
across.
yeah, so it's just a constant flow where they're going in there and then working with Joel for traffic, but you really didn't have much directing of traffic last year, did you?
No, no, pretty smooth.
Right. And we did, I mean, from COVID year, we were probably about a little over 10,000 people down from COVID year. So it's not like it was a significant amount of people over 5.5 weeks that we were down. So the traffic held up pretty well.
Yeah, I don't know about the rest of you. I really didn't see last year, the issues with traffic. I didn't see any of it really, and I drove around a
That was
few
crazy,
times.
but last year wasn't bad at all.
2 years ago, it
years.
wasn't even crazy, it was embarrassing.
Yeah, it sounds like we're providing barricades for the light up the night, and we're helping them out with that kind of stuff, so it always seems reasonable.
Well, actually, I paid for the we bring in the barricades and we put them from, if you're going north on I, we put them from the entrance to Sam's Christmas Village. Sort of on that corner.
Mhm.
I wanna say it's like, don't quote me for sure, but it was like 110
I'm gonna quote,
barricades. Does that sound about
I'm gonna
right?
quote you.
They're Jersey barriers, so it's a cement barrier that would
Yeah.
prevent a car from going off the road and landing with pedestrians.
That's good.
When they're walking in the ditch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, he provided those and puts them in, and it's basically our approval to say, yeah, it's good, it's okay to have them there on the public roadway.
Again, getting back to this, you have control over your property and the right of ways, and so normally you're not allowed to put things in the right of way unless the village board approves it, so.
But we can't do that tonight. We just be aware of it and approve it
At
or
the next meeting.
consider it at the next meeting, right?
Yep,
Gotcha. Okay.
At the next meeting?
Well, I think basically at this point is our next meeting is when we'll actually, the board meeting will be next week. So then we'll just go through the approval on it at that point,
Okay.
so.
Owl's getting angry.
Owls need recharge. All right, anything else on the? Okay. Next item, tubing business year review. I see Mr. Kaufman is on. Welcome.
Welcome. I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yes, we can.
Good. I wish I could be there in person, but I'm down south.
We got you on the owl.
All right. Well, outside of the terrible tragedy that I don't want to, relive again for anybody. We've had enough discussion about that. I came in front of this board in this community, whatever that is now, 4 years ago, with my idea of making the river as safe as we can and as family friendly as we can and as consumer friendly as we can. That was the whole idea of the hay racks and that for the tubes, and want to continue to do that. We have seen an increase in families using the river. And I think we'll see more and more of that.
And I do know one of the things from that CAP survey that we got, it was, I think 80% were in favor of tubing in a family friendly environment. So it wasn't a big, hey, we want everyone wants to get rid of it or anything like that. I think there is a portion that do, and that, if it becomes more family friendly, I think that would help in that regard. But that did seem like from the respondents, opinion that that was something that they wanted, as more of a drive towards family friendly. That's at least just for feedback from your standpoint.
Was that data shared with any of the tubing business owners, or
don't know.
I don't know what would, I don't even know where that data came from. I know there was a questionnaire. I think it was online. I think it was back toward the first of summer.
Yeah, and I don't agree with your assumption, with, the feedback.
Well, the percentages that they have in there, they ask about,
Yeah,
if you wanted, it was like, it was close to 80%, I think, that
yeah, some of the,
Well, and it depends on which.
definitely
question.
share this.
43 and 37.
Yeah, do we share, can we share this with,
It's on
We
the
can-
building,
okay,
which,
I know they had
which, yeah.
current condition,
So.
they had a tubing,
Okay,
well, I'm just,
no, if you go to main issue, is that where it is?
Right there.
yeah, the main issues for the breakdown.
That's where the demographics are
I do
correct.
not have any issues.
I don't have any issue with tubing on the river. I'm okay with tubing if there's greater rules policing, and that totals 80%. 48.74, 31.93.
So then, if you go through and you read the comments, and I don't remember what section it was in. But there was the prevailing kind of, I don't want to say it's anti-tubing, but they're like, look, control the alcohol, control the drugs, control the nudity, control
Right.
whatever, the uncontrollable, right? Essentially how that goes.
Well, and I would just. My one thing, and when commenting on that, or when looking at that, is the comments of the people that answered, and then how many times you get a survey and people answer, but they don't do comments. So there's people that feel strongly enough about it, make comments. So if we do have 15% saying I'm not okay with tubing on the river, those might have been most of the comments that we got. I'm
Well-
not saying it was or not, I'm just.
Yeah, I just want there to be
That.
context,
Yep,
that
for
just
sure.
because if somebody says, hey, I'm not okay with it, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not okay with it.
Right,
It means
and that's
I
part we
wish there
don't
was
know.
less booze, or I wish there
Right.
was less drugs or whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely feedback on the bottom of that.
And I think that's one thing from the context standpoint is we don't necessarily know where those comments fell into, where they voted on that
Correct.
category. So
Yeah,
that-
they're not correlated.
Right, so to not have that correlation is kind of it's a sketchy thing to draw.
Yeah, we look at this as like an amalgamation of data, right? So it's a whole bunch of stuff and we pick through it, and that's kind of, I went through it earlier today.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess I didn't look at the percentages more as the comments, so.
Right.
uh,
So,
So yeah, thanks for sharing that with me. I'm encouraged by that. Because like you said, 80% of our community is either in favor of it or is in favor of it, as long as we do the right things to make it more family friendly and under control. So, and that's exactly where we want to go at River's Edge. So we're right in line with, I think, what the community is looking for from us.
and of course, that's 140 respondents or whatever that answer that, maybe I think 100 answered the question, 40 denied. So
118.
right, so you're not, it's a small segment, but that's statistics, right? Would fall probably within the still statistically significant. Took me a second.
Well, I mean,
sorry.
on the bell curve of, what we
3,000.
expect to hear, right? You're gonna have people that are like, oh, it's the worst thing ever. You're gonna have people, oh, it's the greatest thing ever, and everybody else falls in between somewhere.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
and I think that was represented.
That was a great call.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
yeah, I mean, it was an interesting year, we'll say that.
We'll say that.
We'll say that.
And as always, I'm always open to any ideas or something that we can do better.
And I think that's something that we definitely, from our August, public safety meeting and things that we need to look at is. For next year is what sort of security, what sort of things can we do, both from the town standpoint, town, county, village. Any company that's utilizing the river for tubers, what sort of things can be done there? And I think that's something that we need to look at. And address before we get to the March timeframe, so that way we kind of have a better plan in place. So that way, when the tubing season does hit, that we have a good idea of what's going on in advance of it.
Lastly, if I can, I know you guys probably don't have all the answers, but I heard you talk about the bridge again, and I'm aware of it shutting down. Do you think, I know they can't they probably have to put some sort of drop nets or whatever they do underneath when they do work on the bridge, because they can't shut down the river per se, 'cause that, you know, it's a public river, so people on their kayaks or tubes can travel underneath that bridge. Do you think they will have any problems with people walking across that footbridge and then underneath the bridge?
Yeah, I would think that's a no-no.
No problem.
They don't
So
have any problem.
You're getting those from that one, Steve.
Yeah, they'll have a construction. Zone, you know, stay out and for any work that's gonna be done underneath the bridge.
And netting,
So, and that, but yeah, bulk of the work is gonna be on the opposite sides of the bridge.
See on the ends.
yeah,
And so there's really nothing. Too much for to follow anybody.
Okay,
So know that they won't allow it, or no, there won't be a problem?
won't be a problem.
Won't
There
be,
won't be a problem.
okay, good to know.
Anything else? Okay. Next up, discussion ICUP amendment for Somerset Amphitheater Live Nation. EJ is here. Yep. How about I let you talk to it?
So when we usually do this, you usually read it out.
Well, we're not doing the full approval part of it right now.
No, you usually do the amended or anything.
Right, okay, so what the, I guess what's been proposed or is being proposed is amending the ICUP.
So let me stop you here.
Okay.
So in the previous years, that was taken out already.
That was already taken, removed from that.
So the only thing we have here that it's asking is no camping, no overnight camping in the parking lots. Yeah, it does say that, yeah. So if you read, go on page, page 3(8)(c),
Say it one more time.
page 3(8)(c),
Very bottom done.
very bottom, and then it goes on to the next page.
Okay, so yeah, the last sentence is no overnight parking in event parking lots, so is that something that you want to address that you're looking?
Now,
at?
we always put signs where we do for the county, put porta potties, and we always put a sign on the porta potties, no overnight camping.
Okay,
And we can camp parking lots. We just have to get a permit from the county at that point. So,
okay,
like if we use that parking lot, because that's in here too. We use that 37 acres that he bought from us. I have to get a permit from the county. And instead of using it for a parking lot, then we can use it for camping. And it's in the ICP.
okay.
It's all in there.
Does everybody know what he's asking for? Because I don't.
So,
And we have no proposal. This is the original
yeah, so this
permit that,
doesn't even have
It's
to
in
change, because so I met with Doug just to tell him to get on the agenda. We have a couple events coming up
Mhm.
where the artists require tailgating, or they won't come.
Is that for merch sales?
No, the Somerset Amphitheater.
No, but why would they ask for that? Okay, never mind, go ahead. Gotcha.
It's a
So they can sell stuff.
no,
For tailgating.
for
I
tailgating.
understand what tailgating is, but well,
So
They
you
just want to party
basically.
before the show.
Mhm.
no,
Yeah, I mean, it's all over the place, like Alpine Valley, I actually went down there, I've been helping down there, down by Madison. And, it's well organized. I mean, they come in and they set their little 10x10 tent behind their car and they sit there and wait for the show to start. So
I mean, tell me you don't think football game.
That's what I thought, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I mean,
Yeah.
you thought like,
There, I don't,
anyways, it's
I mean,
okay.
they're really not selling stuff out there. It's more the people that come to that are waiting to get into the show, and it's an early ticket, so, you know, we charge extra
Yeah.
to come in early.
Okay.
So. But
Is there language in there preventing you from doing that? at home?
there was years ago.
Keep that,
Yeah.
here's what happened, EJ and I had talked, and when I was doing the concerts, we had that in there. Because we were camping at Sunrise Hideaway, Somerset Camp, River's Edge. And it was in there that there was no tailgating in the parking lots because everybody was walking from the other campgrounds. But when Matt bought it, it was all fenced in and they took all that property and then they bought all the third property out back. So they're not using all the other campgrounds where everybody's walking through town. They're all contained in one piece of property. So that's why they took it out of the interim conditional use permit. And EJ had thought it was still in when he had talked to you.
Matt even thought it was still.
So it was years ago that it was in there that they couldn't tailgate, but it came out like 6-7 years ago.
So what are you looking to have amended?
So this is
No,
the,
right now,
we
we
don't
have-
need to do anything?
We have to get it approved.
You're looking to get this approved.
Yeah, we have to do it once a year.
Oh,
Yes.
it says, and
So this isn't the annual review, this specifically says amendment.
Right, that's what we put it on there for. This does,
Yeah, and then do the approval.
number 9 does say
That'll be
that,
there.
well,
but the
it's
only,
prior to January 1, we have to have it.
Yeah.
reviewed.
So we'll do it next.
Yeah,
I'm gone.
so the only
I mean,
difference is that one section, that's it.
well,
Yeah, but it's not even in there, so it
No.
doesn't matter.
yeah.
Sounds like there's no amendment.
Well,
Ready.
So I got a question.
Yeah, we could have had it taken off the agenda.
So I got a question as long as it's in front of me.
Yeah.
Says here permitting will be allowed to have music till 2:30 AM on Saturday and Sunday nights.
Read
On
down.
a smaller stage in the.
Yeah, on a smaller stage, but still, you know.
Yeah.
That's down in the Grove where we had no problem before. You can't hear it. You really can't hear it when it's down there. That was the idea of the Grove down there.
Why on Sunday night though? I understand, I get to understand
It's
that.
the end of the weekend. So is this on the agenda for the
This-
full board next week? Does it, should it be?
Well, would go on for just review of this, go on for next month. It has to be done before January. So the whole point of today was doing the ICUP change for the amendment to allow tailgating inside fenced areas on their property. But since that was removed from here, if I would have known prior to 2 days ago, we could have had it removed from, even today, we could have said there's nothing to do on the agenda.
Well, I thought we could still,
Right, and I think because we specifically indicated it was just for that we can, do the regular review of it.
Mhm.
So we can do we'll do the review on our end. I guess next month. Can we modify and put on the agenda for next week to actually review this?
If there's no change, and it's just the annual approval, I think you can have it on the agenda for approval next week.
at the board meeting.
Yeah, that's the board
Board
meeting.
meeting, yeah.
So,
If my concern was if there was gonna be a substantive amendment that, for public hearing.
right, okay. So we can get that on the
Board meeting question. So you mentioned overnight parking, that's not gonna be allowed in the parking lot, right?
We never have,
Okay,
no,
and camping in the parking lot, that's not what you're asking for?
no,
Okay. So
but we
that's-
can. So if we have a really big show
Mhm.
that
You can get the permit for the
we
40
can get the permit for the,
back 40.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, all right, perfect.
if it's used for parking. There's no camping.
That's kind of the stance that you're
That's
going with.
like that one right next to. By the bank there, that parking lot too, that you guys took over.
Yeah, we can't.
That-
camp
You're not
there.
gonna camp in that one.
No, no,
Well, I heard you say that you could camp in there and that's why
we could in our ICUP, we can camp in the parking lot
With permit.
with the permit
from the county.
from the county, yeah.
The only thing that permit is from the county, so don't get it mixed up. It's not like it's hard to get. It's just for a camping permit that they have to have potable water and security and this. and
Porta
that.
potties and lighting.
It's in his intern commissioner's permit that he can camp in any of those parking lots if he wants to.
But they've expanded into that one, there, because that used to be just parking only when it was owned by somebody else. It wasn't part of this ICU.
No, but they approved.
It is now, it's in here.
ICU.
Right.
It's in the ICU.
That was approved last year?
We got that approved and we got the approval for the ICUP for his parking lot too.
That's the 4 acres or which one is that on the
It's
parcel
on-
numbers? On the front?
No, hang on now.
Cause you got
Let's,
1 acre, 1
let's review that next week, because that's kind of beyond the scope of what we have on the agenda right now, so we can review that. If you have questions, we can get it sent out and send that out there, so
Yeah, so somebody will get it, Andrew, if we put on the agenda for next week,
he won't, Andrew here,
somebody can.
Don't worry.
so, okay. All right.
Thank you, Ben, for the Anders.
What's that?
Thank you, Ben, for put it on the agenda.
All right, thank you
That's a
guys.
promotion.
That's a promotion.
Attorneys are next to used car sales, no offense to used car salesmen.
Next on the agenda, light up the night event plan, so that basically, we already did that. Up in Public Works. I don't know that we need to have any further discussion on that.
No, there was an inquiry about, having an officer there. I can reach out to him about that.
Okay. All right,
The new guy on it.
Oh, new guy.
Nice.
okay. Did anyone have anything else on that? I think we went through it enough.
Do we know how many concerts we have next year? We asked that.
It's not really-
That's, I don't
Not on
know,
the agenda.
yeah, not on the agenda. You could reach out to him and ask him after the meeting or. All right, next up, discussion police chief report.
So the chief of police report typically just contains the department activities and an incident report of the month. I did put some in your packet for our activities from the month of October. Our department participated in a Special Olympics fundraiser called Run with the Cops.
Yeah.
It's at UW River Falls, for October 4th. We did a training at the range this month. We did our state qualification for firearms. We did a trunk and treat up at Christ Lutheran Church. I think it was the Saturday before Halloween. And then on Halloween, we actually had a guy from River Hills donate a bunch of candy and we had our officers go out in spots and hand out candy during the trick or treat event. So kind of a really brief overview of our department activities. And then also in your packet, there should be something that's generated from St. Clair County Sheriff's Office. It says it on the top. And this is essentially just our
Incident reports.
correct. Yeah.
I guess before we move to the incident report, any question on for the chief from the standpoint of any of the officer activities or anything? Okay, now we can move on to the incident reports. So it's just informational for us. We can kind of see where everything's at. 213 records for last month, so 7 items a day on average. Anything, any upticks or anything alarming that's been happening of late, or still looking pretty?
I mean, there's always significant things, heavy things. I've noticed that we've had a lot of injuries lately. Our officers getting injured, use of force situations. It's been up since I started here, specifically starting this summer. I can't really point to the correlation, but I think it's something to note.
is there anything of note with the shooting complaint on Aspen Drive? That was. Just complained that there was sounded like shooting, but they're. Find anything?
So some of these things are still ongoing. I can't necessarily speak to individually.
Okay,
But I can tell you that one involved a BB gun.
okay.
Was it like, yeah.
Anything else?
How's the new guy doing?
Good, he was sworn in on the 31st.
Okay,
He's
so just in time for the Halloween?
yeah, that's right. He's totally.
That was his first day?
One of those.
Nice.
But yeah, he's doing good. He's literally just started training and got all his uniforms and it's still bright-eyed and bushy-tailed.
Good, good. I'll have to get on the ride along. Let's get into that.
Yeah, for sure.
Guys.
Thanks, Joel. All right, next, finance personnel, anything for public comment, 2 minutes per person, 14 minutes topic. No hands raised online or anything. All right. We'll move on to discussion 2023 health and dental insurance renewal.
So there's an email in your packet that is from Jay Connor, who is our broker for employee benefits. And in the middle of the email, it shows that the health insurance, the village has 2 plans. There's a higher deductible plan and then a lower deductible plan. If the employee chooses the lower deductible, they pay more in a premium than the higher deductible. The changes on the premiums are not the same for each plan. And one thing to note on the higher deductible plan, they increased that deductible amount by $500. That's why there's less of a premium change for 2023.
So it went from 43 to 48.
Yep. And I am asking Jay Connor to offer or get us a quote for in between deductible because of the higher out of pocket 4,800 plan. Actually, the increases were less than what we predicted in the budget. We predicted 15% increase overall, so in the range of what they predict, they said the trend is 9 to 11%. And then the dental, there was no change, no premium change at all from this year to next year. And then,
Does this plan qualify you for HSA then?
yeah, we do have any. On this email as well is the group life policy. I know that that's actually number 4 on the agenda, but as long as you're looking at this, when we met with J.A. Connor prior to receiving our renewals, they mentioned that it's very common for employers, including municipalities, to offer some sort of paid life insurance policy plan for their employees. So they reached out to this principal. Actually, there were several that they reached out to, but principal is the only one that provided a quote. And those costs are on the second page of this per month. It would be $93.60 to give a $25,000 life insurance policy to each employee. So that'll be on for consideration next.
That's a new benefit
That would be a new benefit
per employee.
for
I don't know what this is.
comments or discussion on the either the health and dental insurance renewal or the principal life insurance quote?
Was that this new benefit that you mentioned with the life, was that included in the budget?
Kind of. Because we predicted more for our insurance policy renewals than what they came in at. So there is money. It's just not earmarked exactly as this new policy, this new benefit.
I didn't have any questions.
Moving on, discussion 2023 wages.
So, we have a list of the I would call cost of living adjustments for the most part, on each position in the village. I believe there were some, considerations in some departments for, performance.
1591 for summer help. We had discussed that going up. Is that what it's gonna stay at? Because we were having a hard time getting people this last year for that.
We can,
I think Mark even mentioned bringing that up to, 17 or 18 in order to get people working there.
Okay.
So I did, if is that the number that we were using this last year for recruitment?
18 is what I used.
Or the 1591 that wasn't what it was? We were at 18.
I will change that.
What's up?
I will change that.
Okay, yeah, I didn't share that with you on this document, so. I don't have access to this document. But it's not, that's why it wasn't changed. And I know John.
You want an physical clerk from the village?
I didn't know I got paid. I didn't know I got paid. Did you? I guess so.
That's like a hearty handshake nowadays.
Summer help.
All right, so you talked about the summer help moving that up to 18. Is there anything else you have for comments or questions on the wages? Proposal? All right. Hearing nothing. Move on, look at the,
Skip forward, go to 5.
well, we still have unfinished business.
No.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Sorry, discussion 2023 budgets, general capital and debt funds.
Is everybody aware of, these two gentlemen are financial advisors from Ellers and Associates. No, there's a couple new faces, I'm sure.
Yep.
We've been waiting patiently.
They should have been asked to move up.
Yeah.
They should have
I just for the record, I took care of my guy.
Yeah, they were thrilled as hard. Probably. I don't know.
I just wanted to take a nap.
Yeah, and I'll apologize on part of that. I think some of this we can maybe work and just have all the public comment at the beginning, so it was just kind of a jumping through and where we go, so.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for your patience.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, don't worry about it at all. So I'm Sean Lentz. Josh Lowe, we're both with Ellers. For those of you that we haven't met before, we work with you guys on financial issues in general. Sometimes economic development, sometimes financial planning, debt issuance when the village does that. All those types of projects. An example, when Chuck develops a project for the board's consideration. He's working on the engineering end of it. He's putting together what the cost of it would be. we're doing the side of, okay, if we decide to move forward with it. And we're gonna finance it, pay it back over a series of years, what is that gonna be in terms of an impact on your ratepayers or on your taxpayers? Okay, one of the other things that we spend quite a bit of time on, particularly with Andrea, is on the budget. And you have an unusual year this year because you closed a tax increment district. And you did that in 2022. So next year, that tax base shifts back. And now as part of the tax base of the general fund of the village, rather than being a separate tax base, that the taxes all went to a specific purpose and weren't available for the general fund. So it provides some opportunities for you to consider as you're going to finalize your budget. What Andrea and Felicia had asked us to do is kind of go through the big picture of it. And then you guys decide, here's kind of your limits or some options you'd have. What expenses, debt, operating capital would you want to fit into these total numbers? And that's really the perspective that we're coming from today. Okay. So what I wanted to start with is you go to the second page. And I apologize, we can get a lot of numbers on some of these pages, but I want to use them as a reference. How many of you guys are familiar with equalized value? Anybody heard that term before? Okay. So a lot of the distribution of taxes for communities, a lot of the things that you have limits on as a governmental entity are based on the village's equalized value. That's different than assessed value. Assessed value, when you look at your tax statement and the village levies a tax to you as a citizen in the community, that tax is applied to your assessed value. So that's the actual value that you see as the taxpayer. But equalized value is used for a lot of things in the village. And I just wanted to quickly go through how you as policymakers, as decision makers, you can look at things from an equalized value standpoint and an assessed value standpoint. There's pros or cons of both, right? Because they're not always the same. And that's what this first page is supposed to be trying to do. So starting from the left, there's this thing called TID-in equalized value. So that's the value of the entire village. And it would be your market value. So it's up to date, the actual value as the state sees it. Then you have a TID-out value. The TID-out value is all the value in the village, but not including tax increment districts. And that's the tax base, the TID-out value that your general fund would get levied over of the market value of the village. So if you go then from left to right, then there's also the assessed value. And what I wanted to point out to you guys here is that you can use assessed value, which is what taxpayers see on their statements, for planning purposes. But understand that whenever you do a reassessment, there's going to be a big change in assessed value. So if you look at the column on the far right, assessed mill rate for taxes collected in 19, which was based on valuation date year Jan 1, 18, the mill rate in the village was 9.87. A couple of years later, in 2020, when you guys did a reassessment and the assessed values went up dramatically in the village, the mill rate dropped to 6.69. So what I wanted to just mention to the group is you can use assessed value and assessed mill rates to guide your decision on what you think the best levy is for the community. But if you do a reassessment, it skews things dramatically. Whereas equalized value is much more consistent from year to year because it represents the market value and takes into account changes in value from year to year, where assessed value doesn't do that. The assessed value kind of stays the same and then just changes when you do the reassessment.
If I can ask a quick question to help the group and myself to learn this more. The equalized value, to come up with that, do they see sales of comparable properties throughout the year? So an assessment is like, if they looked at my house and said, you know, Josh's house is worth $250,000, but they don't do my house specifically every year, right? Right. So they're gonna keep that the same. Whereas when they do equalized value and come up with that assessment, they're seeing multiple properties that are going that are similar to my property all over the city. And they do that every year. So you might get this effect where, you know, assess is going like this, but then the equalized goes like this. And so we've got these ratios here that kind of reflect that why it's different. So every now and then they'll do the reassessment, or they'll actually go back and assess all the properties to get it back up to meet it at that point.
To bring those two numbers together.
Right, so that's why you're seeing
So
that.
John, how often does that usually happen? Usually 7 years, do they do a reevaluation like that?
It can be, but you guys are required to do it when I think you're below 80%.
7% equalized or?
Yeah. Yep, so when you start dropping down, then the state requires you to do a reassessment to bring it back up.
And so we're only 10% off of that for 2022, right?
You're right, so you guys are now down to about 90%. Last year, the January 1, 2001 values are pretty much right on. Now you're starting to creep down again.
That's because this last year, the assessed value for not just Somerset, but a lot of other places went up a lot.
The equalized value.
Yes, yes.
Does
Equalized
it
value.
ever go back down again?
Sometimes, but it's rare.
On both, on the
2008.
equalized value, it can go up and down,
Both can.
right?
Both can go up and down, but the trend is usually upward. Every once in a while, you'll have a couple years or a year where it'll go down for a year, but the general trend is going up.
But like assessed values don't ever, they only go up, right? Really only go in one direction.
You don't see them go down too often, but it has happened. It can happen.
Does it have to be fairly dramatic for it to go down?
Yeah, you're probably talking about a situation where either the market is extremely depressed and or you got a lot of demolition going on in your community. You know, some large communities like let's say Detroit, when they had all the problems they were having, the value was going down.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, thanks.
No. So that just as a backdrop, there's a couple ways to look at it, and that's why I wanted to mention that. I don't want to dwell on it too much because it gets involved. So if you go over to the next page, the levy limit worksheet, here's where I wanted to talk with you about the impact of the TID closing and also the impact of a lot of growth occurring in the village in 2021. So I don't know if everyone's aware, you guys are subject to the state's levy limit rules. So you're not allowed to just set the levy at whatever you want. You have to comply with these rules. And the rules are laid out on a worksheet that Andrea and Felicia have to fill out and send in the state every year. That's what we're showing here. Okay. So what I wanted to mention for you guys this year, which is a unique year, the TID value closing, and that's the third line down, that it impacted your levy potentially to the tune of 13.5%. So you had a very successful tax increment district. That value shifting back to the city's, the village's general tax base was 13.57% coming back. But the state won't let you get 100% of that. They only give you 50% of that for your levy to be able to raise your levy. And this is your option to raise it. You don't have to raise it, but it's an option to do it under the levy limit rules. In addition to that, your net new construction from construction in 2021 added another 4%. So the combination of that 6.78, which is half of what the TID provided you, plus the 4%, allows you to do a 10% increase in your levy, subject to the levy limits. Okay. So what does that amount to for this next year? That's in green. That the amount is about $160,000 under the levy limit rule that Somerset could increase your levy if you wanted to above the previous year's levy and still be in compliance with the levy limit rules set in the state. Okay. So any questions on that before I move forward? I don't want to go through all the math, but the state sends us this information. It is what it is.
I'm just curious why you're going through this with us.
We're-
Is it
we're-
normal?
It's
No.
related to the budget.
Yes, so where I'm gonna go with it is, at the end of talking about this, here's some options for different numbers that you could set your budget at. And what the tax impact will be to the folks in Somerset if you did that. So I'm gonna show you some options. You can do a bunch of things in between these options, but we're gonna show you options. Wanted to give you this as a background is why, where are these numbers coming from? Okay, any other questions on there? All right. So where the rubber hits the road is the next page. What we did on this page is we laid out 3 different options for the village board to consider for this upcoming budget year. And what they amount to is different levy amounts and what the impact would be on the taxpayers, okay? And we did show it in both equalized and assessed value. Pretty much they're consistent, but one is a bigger impact than the other. So here's the option, starting with the column on the left here, 2022 budget. That's the year we're in right now. Okay, so you levied this back in 21 and the year is 2022. Your tax levy for your general operations of the village was 1.7 million. You spread that over the tit out tax base of the village, and your mill rate, your equalized mill rate in green was 6.75. And then below that, you see the different impact on values of property in the village. So if you owned a $300,000 property, your village tax using equalized value was $2,025. Okay, everybody with me on that?
Well, I am to one thing of what the budget numbers that are sitting here I'm looking at are not related to what you're saying of 1.75 on the tax levy. Our
There's
budget
three-
numbers are for
There's
for that
3
year.
numbers that make up that levy, remember? There's 3 numbers that make up that levy. It's the general, the debt, and the capital. So this first one you're looking at is only the general.
Right, but the last one would be at the back end, right? Where it says
Um,
total revenues, total expenses.
No, you're only talking about this on page 1. This first line, it says village tax levy. It's 100,0041110. There is the 2022 budget number and the proposed 2023. Now you go
So the tax levy is 1.332.
for the general funds. Now you go to this next budget, the debt budget. It's after page 5 of the general. Then you take that 320,0041110 village tax levy, 2022 budget, 2023 proposed. That's another 199,000 for 2022. And then the last page is the capital fund. Same thing, first line, tax levy, 182,858.96 for 2022, and then the proposed 2023. So it's those 3 numbers make up that 1,700,000.
750,000, right?
Not just that first one.
That clears it up.
Got everybody good on that? All right. So the 2022 numbers, moving from left to right, I'm on the top of the page up here. The 2022 numbers, if you decided as a village board to levy the same amount as last year, okay? So don't take advantage of the ability to increase the levy. You're gonna do exactly the same amount, the 1,715,000 again. What has changed is your tit out value went from 254 million up to 334 million. So the mill rate goes down in that situation. Levy stays the same, but tax base grows, mill rate goes down. And then in purple for equalized value, this shows the comparison of what 2023 would be like as compared to the current year we're in right now, 2022. Okay.
So that's one option. The second option in the red is that we take advantage of that 160,000 that I talked about. And we increase the levy to include that 160,000. So the levy goes from
5.2 to 5.4.
5.12 to 5.41, right, right. And then you see the corresponding, even with increasing, because the tax base is growing faster than the rate, the increase in your levy, you're still gonna get taxpayer relief or a lower tax impact from that. And then in blue, the third option is one where we say, we want to keep the mill rate the same. And what that translates to is there's no benefit to the taxpayer from one year to the next of the TID closing and the growth. So in this one, you could raise the levy from 1,715,000 up to 2,260,000. You may say, well, how could we do that if the number before was our levy limit number? The way you would have to do it is through issuance of debt or some other vehicle, because debt doesn't count against your levy limit. You could issue debt and raise your levy as much as you want to repay the debt. But other levy, like your operating levy to pay wages and salaries, that is subject to the limit. Okay, so these were three options, and you could do anything in between these, but we just wanted to get for discussion three different approaches for you to think about. The bottom half of the page, and this gets a little convoluted, so it's a little, probably more than you want to know, but the other thing that I wanted to just make sure you're aware of, so there's no surprises, is the top part is the equalized value, the bottom is really what the taxpayers would see, because this is assessed value. So for this, the numbers are not quite as strong in terms of that savings from 2022. And the reason being primarily is that the assessed value did not grow as much as the equalized value did. And it's partly of what I talked about is you haven't done a reassessment. The market value keeps going up, but the assessed value, because your assessor hasn't come out and reassessed all the properties, it's growing, but it's growing much slower than the equalized, the market value.
Didn't that just happen 2 years ago?
Yes. That's crazy.
How often should it happen?
I'd say most communities do it, what, every 5 to 10 years, they do a reassessment?
I would say that was the
8 years.
second rebuild I've done since I've been here, so.
Like 8 years.
Yeah, the jump in value, that's what Josh was saying, the jump in equalized value, not just in Somerset, all over the place. From 2021, January 1 to January 20 is off the charts in Wisconsin, huge growth.
The question you're asking is spot on, like, didn't we just do this? We were having this conversation with a lot of clients.
Yeah.
So you're right, it's because that valuation has gone up so much on equalize, that the assessed value is not kept up, and it's really a statewide issue.
So the numbers, we're doing the same things that I just talked about up top, either keeping the levy the same in purple, taking advantage of the increase in red that's provided to you under the levy limit rules, or through some creativity, increasing the levy to a higher level so that the mill rate stays the same. Those options are pretty much the same from the top set to the bottom, but the impact or the benefit of the savings to the taxpayer from 22 to 23 are less, because the assessed value is not growing as much as the equalized value, and that was the top part that we had talked about.
I think the way that I think about it is the sum on top to equalize, that's kind of the way that the state looks at it. You know, we would think about it as budget and finance people. The bottom line, the stuff on the bottom, the assessed value, that's probably the way your constituents see it. That's the thing that shows up on their tax bill that they get, that they actually have to pay. So the way that Sean got here is by doing a bunch of calculations that the state doesn't even do. There's no such thing as an assessed TID out value. The reason we wanted to do that is because if you want to think about that as a communications tool, talking to constituents, that's the kind of language they speak, right? So they both are saying the same things. That from option A, B, and C, left to right, you can get different tax impacts or benefits from that. You know, one, using all that new capacity for projects. using it all for tax relief or somewhere in between, right? So thinking about option purple, red, or blue is the same on the top or the bottom. Just how you take that and who you talk to about it is gonna receive that a little bit differently, but the core message is still the same.
What have we done historically? What did we do last year to this year?
We didn't have this
TID code. Yeah, we
opportunity
have a TID code.
last year.
Okay, great.
The ability to do this increase is because the TID closed, and you also had a really good growth year.
Right.
The levy limit rules, the only time you can raise your levy is when TID districts close. Or you have a lot of net new construction. In the case of Somerset,
You had both.
you had both. Okay.
Mhm.
Plus the
So
big
my
valuation.
big question to you guys is, if we were to keep it right where it's at right now, with having it, at the 5.75 level where it drops down, is that going to skew us and cause us, force us to below that 80 percentile assessment rate where it would cause
They won't impact that. at all.
it won't.
No.
No,
What it'll
that's an
impact-
assessment.
It'll impact the budget. You would have to cut more expenses to meet that number.
The number in purple.
Yeah.
Or 1,750,000. And maybe that would be helpful, Andrew. What's in your budget right now?
Our budget was that, I thought that number, wasn't it?
No,
What's our budget? What's our
our
budget? number?
budget right now is in option B. Where there's an increase in the levy to cover costs that have been incurred for projects that will be borrowed for next year. So we increase, I thought I had the number on this form, but it is
I've got a calculator. We need to sum the three
not, yeah.
levies up.
So you guys proposed the budget at B,
At B.
in the middle.
Yep.
Right.
I think it's
Yep,
really
so there's
close
a
to it,
tax
right?
saving and
To me, no.
an increase, 1,409, 495.
Okay.
394, 404. And 103.
One,
1003. I think.
so I've got that at 1,000,009.
19,
Is that right? Because we're at,
I think. so.
we were at 1,810,000, but
1910370.
that's what I've got.
Yep, and that's the max levy that we can.
Yeah, that's if we do the full, geo debt amount, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
So this number, the difference between what Andrea has and what I have in the 1,810,000 is you could go higher on your debt levy to cover some expenses that you've incurred for projects this year.
mhm,
My number, the 1,810,000 on here, Josh and I's number in red, that number is just the debt you actually have to pay.
mhm.
But you could go to that 1,000,009, and if you did the 1,000,009, another 100,000, you're still gonna be below that, you're still gonna have some tax savings in there, it just wouldn't be as much as you're
Right.
showing here.
Yeah.
On
So we're
this
at 1.9
1.9. yeah,
from 1.7 to 1.9,
Yes,
right?
Yes, going from 1
Seven,
for this year.
right?
right,
So it's like $160,000 additional revenue.
tax levy, yeah.
So with that $160,000 additional revenue, we got special projects that we're spending that on?
The preliminary engineering to the state for Churchill is the main cost that money is going towards.
Okay, so that's basically this 1 year, or is that ongoing?
That was for 2020 or 2021 and 2022. And I don't think they're done yet. Charging us.
Yeah.
And then there's the Reed Street curb and gutter project. That would be covering. That's part of that Bruce Lane. Pay request that you all just said to
go forward with.
Mill rate would go to. Instead of 5.4, if you did the 1.91, would be 5.7 instead of 5.4.
Which still keeps you vaguely within the red, right? You're not going all the way up to blue, whereas you're going all the way up to the max limit, right? You're keeping the same mill rate, but you're not using the entire thing for tax relief.
So in a couple of years' time, in essence, those costs could be dropped down to get us more into back into the purple. Because we wouldn't have those additional expenses in, right?
Well, the other item that we were kind of thinking about with this is you're doing these expenses now, but next year Chuck's gonna bring the bids for those projects to you for your approval, then you're gonna have to issue debt to pay for the construction of the project, and the debt payment will hit you in 24.
We're covering Churchill?
We
That's
are
still is.
required,
Huh?
we are required to pay part of that project.
I thought that was pretty
The
much
sidewalks,
Wisconsin DOT that was. covering.
Lighting,
Okay, so the sewer and water is what we're covering. We're not covering any of the other things, just that utility.
There's
No,
storm and lighting.
yeah,
Trail. And I think isn't there another project potentially in there, Chuck, too, that besides just the Churchill? If I remember right.
Well, the trail stuff, where's that gonna come from? Your portion of the trail grant, that's a
that-
couple years down the road.
Yeah, that's the trail grant, right?
Yeah,
What if they got 20% of that?
and then,
20 grand.
but the bridge is coming out of the bridge account.
mhm.
Um,
There's all the curb and gutter projects that was. in
Yeah,
the
that,
memo.
the additional curb and gutter, not just the stuff we did last year.
Yeah.
And plus how would that TID, if we do get some businesses going in TID 5 and we have to do a regional lift station, build roads. I'm not sure where that money's coming from.
Well, the hope is we can line up those expenses for that with the development and not have it hit the general fund of the village. That would be a strategy anyway, depending on how much development we get. That's always the key.
So what you want to avoid is having a huge tax savings one year and then going back to the taxpayers the next year and saying, oh, by the way, your taxes are now going to increase by $500 because we gave you that $400 savings last year. Now we have all these other things that we have to pay for, and so now your taxes are going back up. So you want to keep it more level than going on a roller coaster.
Yeah,
Right.
what we're trying to do is have it come down because the idea is you guys probably want to give some tax benefit for closing the TID and sharing.
That's the purpose of it.
Exactly, yep,
Is to give a tax benefit back to property taxes are,
correct.
that's a main thing that I hear.
Oh, yeah.
Property taxes are extremely high in this town.
Well, I think that's part of it is having that where we can, with the growth in the village and everything along with the TID, that people are like, well, I thought the growth was gonna help us out and they're not seeing it. So I definitely think we have to do something to,
That's right.
let's see, not give everything back because we still have to be responsible and promote growth and everything else, but we have to.
Well, there's,
say,
And with
Dangle a
those,
carrot.
there's more expenses.
if there was, like I asked, if there's projects.
This doesn't make any sense to offer $500 if that's what it is, and then the next year, we have all these, and then.
Well, the big
Your
thing is
tax
like you
will go up
say,
$800 and it's like.
the big thing is I'm trying to educate myself with is what are the projects that we're, looking at.
Contemplating.
Because then you could actually make that, have that conversation with those guys saying, listen, these are the projects that we need to pay for. Well, why would we give you a $500 rebate and then turn around, take it away the next year, when we gotta pay for these projects? When we could spread it out over a couple of years. That's what I'm asking.
No, the concept is to get some savings. And then have a new baseline that stays at that level. So it doesn't go back up, but it goes down, but gives you also the ability to absorb a new project or projects. Trying to do both, half and half. Some tax benefit to the citizens of the community. And the ability now to take on some projects that you haven't taken on. Because you would have had to raise the levy if you would have done it. So trying to do the best of both, and then you guys as policymakers deciding, is that the right fit?
Any other questions or comments from anyone? Todd, you look like you have a.
Look, I'm not an accountant, right? I'm not.
Tim and Mill.
I don't, there's a lot of this I
Right.
don't understand, right? And I want to understand what the motivation is for everybody, right? We live here, we do.
Okay, you guys want to know what you guys are getting out of it? That's
We-
usually-
Yeah, no, we live here and like, I have been brutalized because I escrow stuff, right? And so my particular issue has been horrible because my house is brand new and initially it was taxed on that. And then they come in and they say, oh, it's really worth this now, right? And then they came in a year later and said, oh, but we're gonna reassess it, right? So I've been, and I know what that's like, so I would, as a taxpayer, I would probably rather have the taxing authority have their thing together and not, here's $500 and then we're gonna take 1,700 from you next year, right? That would be my choice.
Yeah, and so that's where we're trying to go, is you guys giving us direction, working with Andrea. To settle in on a number that provides some tax relief, but also gets the projects you guys want done. And unfortunately, the time gets crunched here because you got to set your levy pretty soon.
Yep.
But we want to introduce it today and then hopefully give you guys a number next week. With some of these questions about the projects answered too, that is looking at it for next year, but also a couple of years out. Like the village president was saying, they're trying to do both at the same time.
Anything else?
So we're increasing our budget by 5%. This year,
Mhm,
Because the TID closed.
because the TID closed.
mhm.
And really good net new construction. There's a lot of places that are not getting 4%.
Yeah, that's why that's extraordinary.
That's a great thing to have. So you really had three things working in favor of the.
What did it go up last year?
value.
What did it go up last year?
It was like 1 or 2%.
Yeah, it wasn't very much.
Yeah.
Much
So
smaller.
last year was smaller. This year it's over double that.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, John.
Yeah,
Very good.
thanks for
Appreciate
working
it.
with us on this. I know it's not easy the first time seeing this stuff. So it's pretty.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's like, you were-
So it's a consensus to move forward with the numbers presented. Or, because you do have your budget hearing next week.
The budget or this thing?
That thing.
They're both together.
But we have to do one to get to the other, right? Kind of,
Kind of.
yeah. Well, he's like, we're gonna make.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, it's kind of a discussion standpoint versus
Mhm.
anything else, so I mean. Like, so this, I haven't heard any other discussion saying that they like the purple one better. Or that, no, we need to go with the blue or the blue, so I forget that. My assessment is that we would say that, that's how I'm kind of seeing it.
Okay.
So.
I'm gonna Google it.
No, it's fine. Mill rate is just like the amount of debt that is held by the community divided by the equalized value of the community, right?
It's the total levy, debt and everything else. So it's operation part of your levy, if you look at your levy, like Andrew said, you got the operational levy, the debt levy, and the capital levy. You sum all those together and divide it by the value of the community, that's your mill rate.
Yeah, so say your value is already on that page.
Yep.
Right.
Your value was it 254 million?
Was last year.
That was last year. Yep.
Okay.
$1 of tax for each $1,000.
$1,000 about that.
Right, so that's the way you think about it. So you take basically all the budget, and essentially divide it by the value of the community to come up with that number. Right, so if it's a higher number, that either means that there's a lot of debt or a very small community, right? Somewhere in there, it's a ratio. So you just kind of look at it as a measurement that we have on there and, it was 517, at the low end because you got so much growth. Or if you add as much projects as you need to, it jumps up, right? And so even if you kept the same amount of your budget, but your value increases, Somerset became, $1 billion community. It would go way down, right? But you still have the same streets, you still have the same police officers, you still have the same fire department, all those things. So one way or another, you need to figure out a way to pay for those. So a lot of times we'll have clients come to us and ask, oh, is our mill rate high or is it low, depending on what you see? And I kind of have to say, it really depends on the needs that you have. I can't really be the person to say if it's high if your roads are crumbling, right? You needed to do those projects.
Right.
So, it's just a way to look at how much do we have now, what is it relative to?
We could give you, if it helps, it's also a way to compare yourself with other communities. Not that you all provide the same services, but you don't. But we could give you a list of other communities in St. Clair County, what their mill rate is compared to what Somerset's
That
is.
would be beneficial.
Would that be helpful? Yeah, we have.
Are we in good shape? Are we sitting in pretty good shape?
Yeah, I don't think you certainly don't stand out as being way off. the
Well,
mark.
we're not New Richmond.
Oh,
Yeah.
hey, right?
Yeah, we'll get that to Andrea, so she.
Yes.
That'd be great.
Thank you,
We
guys.
have that.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah,
Feel
thank you
free,
very
any
much,
questions,
guys.
like.
Thanks, guys.
All right, moving on, unfinished.
There's one quick question on this before we move on. On that 5.7 number, are we gonna get a different valuized version of what that's gonna be for assuming the rates like we got this chart on here?
We can update that, given what Andrea told us about
Yep.
the cost, of
Yep.
getting it to the 1.9, we'll email it to her, she'll get it to you.
That'd be great.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Great, thanks again.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, Sean.
Right.
Jeff.
Unfinished business discussion, Village Park and ball fields. That we really, I don't know, that was stuff that.
On this, this was left on the prior.
Right,
chair.
prior.
Yeah, the question is whether or not we're even talk about it anymore. Or we take it off the agenda.
If
It
there's
was pretty
something
much, there was some discussion about looking into getting some state monies or something like that. And, I remember, Sean was saying something, he was gonna talk to somebody about it, and I don't know if that ever materialized, or you never heard anything like it. Well, with the current status of it, it can be pulled off there as far as I'm concerned. I just don't know, I didn't know if there was any opportunity for,
I guess there
new
was,
money for ball fields.
right, I guess at this point, there was the discussion about what we wanted to do as far as plans going forward. I guess the only thing I'd like to is just if we have any more updates as far as, I know we talked last time on the stairs that, not the other ones, but the ones by the outfield of the first ball field. The wooden ones. The
The
wooden
ones that were
ones.
supposed to be removed this year?
Right,
got
and if those are still planning to get removed, or if they have been, I don't know if they have been. or
I'll
not.
check.
And, this is something that Bob and I constantly, if we run across again.
Yeah.
We'll bring it, regardless if it's on the
Yeah.
agenda or not, we'll bring it up to you.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
Bob, did you get a chance to look at that that basketball field I was telling you about where that big?
Yeah.
Did anything get addressed?
Yep, they're very good area.
Perfect.
So, yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I
Appreciate it.
Yep.
So the consensus is to remove the Village Park
Yeah.
ball field.
Okay. Next item, discussion ordinance change for one-time sewer credit.
I'll have to get back to you on this one still, so.
Okay.
Honors of me, just find time to get together on this to go and. Get this,
Is that something that we might be able to get before the end of the year?
I hope so.
Because we approved it back when I first got on board in March, and it's something that,
It's
it's
just
a good thing for people, and
Yeah, and it's
We only
like
did
on the
it
back
once.
burner with, everything going
Yep.
on, and then throwing a comprehensive plan at me too has been very time consuming, so I apologize, but I just reminded Anders that.
well, he's here now. So
I know.
It's great for you to hang around for this one.
Right, yeah. Okay.
There's certain things I star next to my notes, which are the attention ones.
Yeah, we'd like to get one done.
It's work, a lot of those have stars. Okay,
Only 2 stars. can win this.
we'll move on then. New business discussion, Zoom meeting policy. So I know, Mr. Lee and Mr. Crone, you guys are talking about the Zoom meeting policies.
So the beginning and the end of this is when we're on a regular meeting like this, right? And I don't know if this employs Zoom, but this thing, right?
It
And
is
however
Zoom,
it's going
so.
out to the interweb. When we go into closed session, if nobody from outside this room gets that access, right? So right now, everybody's out except if there's a board member out there. Right? So the
Correct.
proposal is, because we can't control, nor do we know, if I'm sitting in a room and there's people behind me, right? It's just the simple one, right? And I can't think of a reason not to. So that was proposed.
Right, so
Um,
I mean, basically what it is you're saying that it's on your honor, if you will, that if you are attending a meeting via Zoom, that there is nobody around you, there's no one that can hear, you're not in a car, you're not in a whatever, you're not at work or something on a Zoom call in closed session where someone could hear something that they're not supposed to be able to.
that's part of it, yes. The other part
Do
of
we,
it is,
do we actually kick the people out? Will we do that then?
we do.
They'll be, okay.
Yeah, they'll get kicked out, put into the waiting room.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
So-
mean, I guess I hope what it does is that it drives attendance in person, right?
Right.
I get it that some of us work and travel and whatever, right? But for the most part, if we're gonna head up committees and we're gonna run things, I need to be here.
Right, and I think that from a closed session standpoint, as long as we have a quorum, then it doesn't really matter from that standpoint. If someone has. Obviously, there are certain instances, someone gets COVID, whatever, they're not coming in. If someone does have to travel for work, that does happen, that's occasionally a thing, and it's not really something we can control. I do understand and I don't completely disagree with changing it and having them removed from it, but it is a challenge for those that don't always have the option of coming in, where it's not an option. Still to be part of the process, it's part of our role and everything else, so. Where do you draw the line of what we say, we're holding on to people to say this is on your honor that no one is there, no one's available to hear? I think it's very similar to saying the same thing, is that when you go home, you're not talking to your girlfriend or wife or whatever about those things, or your friend or something like that, so. Yeah, I'd say whichever. So just those types of things, I think it's something that. How much does it matter or not? I'm not discounting it or saying that we shouldn't change it. But I know for me, there will be instances where I won't be able to be here. And if we have something going on. That needs to go into closed session, do we push it out a month, or do we have a different meeting, or am I just not part of that vote, which is. If that's what the board decides, that's what the board decides, so. I
You
guess that's
bring
up
up a
to-
good point. If there's not a quorum, then
Then you can't.
for that
hold it.
person on Zoom making the quorum, then you make that.
I was gonna say that was an exact point, is that there's been some times where committee meetings, it was necessary to have that Zoom. In order to discuss matters and stuff like that, and I think everybody that I know of. Well, except you, I think you've been at every one of these meetings that we've been other way. Well, no, you were on Zoom once too.
And to attend Zoom.
So everybody's kind of been on Zoom at one time or another because of life events, so, I mean, having that opportunity is.
It's not to say that Zoom's not available. What it's saying is we'll go into closed session, right? That's where it gets cut off, and then as soon as we're done with closed session, we come back and everybody's back to normal.
But it could cause, and that's what they were saying, is it could cause a lack of a quorum going into closed session.
And if it does, then like Andrew said, we have to put something out till the next meeting, or we have to have a special meeting or whatever.
There's something prompting this, like an incident that occurred, or I guess what's bringing this forward?
I don't know.
I feel like everything's been running fairly smoothly with all that. We get all the other folks out of.
I guess the thing is, for me personally, was going up to the town and listening to them going on about how the village couldn't make it for 3 meetings. And my experience before and after that with people that should have been here, that weren't here either at all or on time, right? That to me is disrespectful, right? I don't do that to other people, and I don't want to do it to me. So from my perspective, that's kind of where my part of this is coming from, right? The other part was, we have no idea who's on the other side of that call. We don't know.
Like the president said, hopefully it's our honor system that we are doing our due diligence and upholding our oath that we did all take. That we are, keeping mum the word to people outside of this room and part of this group. If we need to, so.
So you asked, I told, that's where it's coming
No,
from
that's-
for me. I don't know where else.
Just so you know, we did address that issue with the lack of people showing up at the meetings also. there was a motion made and seconded that, took care of all of that. So if people are gonna be missing from a meeting, they need to notify somebody, so we didn't have that same kind of situation happen again.
Okay.
But, like you said, I don't see if there's somebody that was, you know, violating that, or if there was some kind of thing that was getting out there, I can completely see where you might want to address this, but I think we've all been holding on to our oath pretty sacred and making sure that if they're going to closed session, then, you know, talk about that stuff.
So the downside is we push meeting off for a week. Right?
Mhm.
In implementing something like this. The upside is we can almost guarantee as much as we possibly can that we don't have any of these issues, then we push for attendance.
Or the downside is also
That's
you.
where I'm at. So
Well, they also, the one other thing that's downside is you don't get that individual's opinion. Because he's not there for that meeting.
And to, even to that end, is there is no guarantee that the next week works if there isn't something going on, or there's, it just, it's a fact of life, right? There's things that happen. So I'm not, again, one way or the other, whatever people decide we want to do, that's the way we go, and we're just having that discussion, right? So it's you know, from my standpoint, I think there's value to having people that can't be here for illness or whatever. Because we actually did have that once, my very first joint meeting with the town where, so I understand, we couldn't have it, we didn't have a quorum. For example, Brandon Kozel was on at the time, he was out sick. He's like, well, I can call in, they're like, yeah, well, they didn't post it as a call-in meeting, so we couldn't get a quorum. When we could have, if that was a call-in meeting, so at least it does help for some things. So I do understand your concerns, and I don't completely disagree.
So just so we know, the town doesn't do Zoom meetings.
I was
Right.
gonna say the
Let's
town
just, let's just say that, right?
Mhm.
Well,
So I mean, it can work. without
Right.
it. I kind of agree with them, like, if you go into closed session, I feel like you're just not, if you're not here, you're not part
So
of it.
the town doesn't do, so they do it for the joint meeting, but they don't,
No,
They don't
they
do
discontinued
any
it.
Zooms either.
they did.
yeah, they don't do it
They
at all.
only did the one,
Oh, was it only one?
and that was during COVID.
Right.
The state allows for closed session via Zoom.
So, I mean, that was something that obviously came up during COVID, and no one did Zoom meetings,
Right.
closed session before COVID. You know, the AG, Attorney General issued some opinions saying, yeah, you can do this as long as the meeting's posted properly. So I remember back in the early days of COVID, when every board member I think it was just about every board member was in their basement, or
Mhm.
you know, you'd occasionally, I mean, but this was in the open session, you'd see kids go by. I have to say the worst experience I had with Zoom was I just sat there and was waiting for someone to ask a question, and finally someone asked a question right at the exact moment that my young son yelled at the top of the stairs down to me. And I thought I clicked mute. And I yelled, quiet. I had not clicked mute. So, but the point is, it was legal. And I think there's just a lot of municipalities that are phasing out of it. But technically it's legal to have it by Zoom.
I guess if it was the norm before COVID and we're kind of getting back to their norms after COVID, I guess.
We didn't do it before. We
No.
Didn't go into closed session over Zoom before COVID.
No.
Since
we didn't
COVID,
do
we
Zoom
did.
before.
Now we're coming back out.
And you might have, and
did use Zoom.
I feel like we probably had some phone calls that if there was a board member that needed to be part of something, we did have phone calls. Seems like a really long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. And we didn't have any sort of
There's no policy.
platform for attending outside of the village hall before COVID. So there was You were here, or you weren't.
You did have, when, Dave Careful was on the
Oh,
board,
yeah,
he
he
would go to
did call
Texas in the winter, and I think he would call in, but that,
Mhm.
I mean, it just,
Bart would-
frankly, it wasn't, in Bart, and it wasn't an ideal situation where I don't think with that phone system, I don't think they heard half of what was going on.
Right.
But they did close sessions that way too, right? I believe, I remember Dave saying that.
Probably, I don't remember, but I'm sure they did.
I mean, I don't see the Zoom going away with having everything with the people wanting more engagement from the community and the community wanting that there in technology as we've had.
Yeah,
A numerous couple of people asked to say, hey, we want more, so that, and with, in all honesty, having worked over on the other side of the river before and trying to get home. In time for a meeting at 6 o'clock is just not possible. I mean, even just working in New Richmond right now, 6 o'clock isn't always easy for me to get here with the work requirements that I have, so. I will always do everything in my diligence to get here tonight. I was, a minute and a half late, so I do apologize for that. But I think that the Zoom option from a community standpoint and engagement is helpful. I mean, we've got a few up there, still now.
I'm not saying you have to have.
Yeah,
Right,
this is only closed
I
session
guess.
for those that day.
right. I'm talking about Zoom in general. So it's just as a thing. So we talk about what it was beforehand. So we said you guys are talking about, and I'm not trying to argue, but you guys are saying, well, we didn't do this before COVID. Well, we
Anders said
didn't do this.
Andrew said that's what, we didn't do that. It wasn't done. COVID happened, did happen, right? It did occur.
Mhm.
And I think what you're saying is now we're coming out of COVID, right? That maybe we would go back to, or maybe that was you, that we would go back to the way things were before. Look, I told you what I thought, right? That's just, that's how I feel. That's not how the board feels, that's how Todd feels.
So in the end, I guess if we want to take and, do we want to take and move this, or does someone, I guess, is gonna have to make a proposal if they want to put it onto the agenda for next week? It would, we can do that if someone wants to. If they don't, that's,
Where are you guys at? If I'm the only one that's concerned about it, then let's move on.
I firmly believe that if you're on the board and you have to call in or however, whatever kind of means that we offer, if the board needs to go into closed session, that individual is given that opportunity to go into closed session with them, because he's elected to do that job. And if you're cutting that person out because he can't attend the meeting, well, then you might as well not even attend the meeting at all.
Do we have closed session on every meeting?
No, but if you do, you
we don't
are
have-
basically eliminating that individual's opinion.
We've been in closed session one time since I've been around, so I don't, whatever. That's one time.
right, and I think it depends
That's my
on the boards, but,
So,
because each individual committee might have it for hiring a new law enforcement officer, doing whatever, so we do have it happen from time to time. But, okay. Well, if somebody else wants to communicate with you and put it on, two people can put it on the agenda for next week, just do it sooner than later if possible.
Like you said, if I'm the only one, then let's move on. If I'm not the only one, then let's put it on.
Pretty sure Chris said he agrees with you, just like 5 minutes, 10 minutes ago.
Okay, perfect. Let's do that.
So add it to the agenda for. All right. Next, discussion Village Park land east of Apple River.
So I had an email exchange with Robert Lindahl, who is the represents Apple. And I can't really. We have a piece of land on the west side of Village Park that is essentially landlocked. The only means of access we have would be passing the river to access it. The land's topography is about 30 to 40%. It's really does, I mean, there's never been any plans for us to do anything because
Is that behind the campground? No, it's not.
it's behind the storage.
Okay,
And
that's not quite the
it's behind
campground.
St.
No
Anne's.
worries.
That's just all like deep hills and
Yep.
can't build anything, mostly garbage or everything.
Well, I mean, you know, we can't get to it to maintain anything on it, so, we're not gonna do anything to maintain it, there's nothing to maintain.
It's just directly across from Village Park. Basically, where you can sit down with this picnic table and stuff down there now by the terminal.
Yeah, it's just interesting.
What are they-
Oh, they've just asked if we want to quit claim it to them, so they add to their parcel total. And I said, well, I can, obviously, if you follow my email, you can see the dialogue.
For free?
We'll be going.
Free?
That's the offer.
That's.
Yeah, so.
I'll take it be free.
So this, I think Bob is bringing this to introduce it to the board as an idea.
So,
If there's gonna be negotiation over it, I would recommend you have that discussion closed.
so right now, the discussion that I'm looking for is, would you guys, number one, consider entertaining parting ways with this?
Quit claiming doesn't mean free necessarily, it just means you're not warranting that you have title and that you own the land. And
What's
you're
the,
just-
what's the upside for us?
And second, would you
You
like
don't, you
me to
can't, you
go,
can't get.
Oh.
Oh,
would you like me to go to the property owner and say, a negotiation on price and bring it back to the board?
What is he figuring on doing with it?
He has nothing he can do with it. All that is, and his advantage is he's gonna be able to say, instead of I have, 60 acres and I have now 63 acres and I want, $10,000 an acre. So adds to the value of the land.
When he sells it?
Yeah. If and when.
What's the upside for us to do that?
Yeah, it gets up back in the tax roll. There's, it's not on tax land right now. So,
Also, their taxes would go up based on how much.
well, I mean, it'd be added to
property they have.
the value of the property would go up, would go from not exempt property to taxable property.
so if the village owns it, no taxes are paid on it.
I think.
Well, right now, I just wanna figure out, because I could have gotten a closed session. But they don't warrant it, because if you guys already say, no, we're not gonna sell this land, then it doesn't mean anything. If you want me to go and talk prices with them, because right now they said, well, we'll take care of it, and we'll quit claiming it as long as there's no cost. If that's not in the cards, I will go have a negotiation with them and say, what do you want to pay? And bring it back to the board in closed session. But you don't wanna start negotiating something and then you have absolutely no intention of parting way with this.
But
So that's all I'm looking for is guidance.
So, I mean, maybe, is this something we want to put on the agenda for closed session next week, and then we can kind of further flesh out and have a little bit more candid discussion on what the board is thinking with this before Bob goes back to.
That's right. Yes.
and can somebody we get options to us too? Like each one? Sure, I guess that you were that.
Well, no, in the meantime, I'll have just a brief conversation with them. I think I have some consensus right now. We'll go back and have a conversation. Okay, thank you.
So did they come to you there?
All right, next department budget report.
There isn't one.
Oh,
I barely had enough time to put back together.
Make a motion to adjourn?
So,
Second.
First and second on the table, any other further comments or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries, adjourned at 8:56 p.m. Thank you.
Don't want me to deserve it.
Thank you, Stephen, all in line.
Yeah.